Welcome back, everybody, to the Nethercast. And today we are going to be talking about some more Mortal Kombat memories. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, or listened to them rather, they are in the archive where we covered the first 4 Mortal Kombat games as well as Deadly Alliance and Deception. So this time we are going to be picking up from there, starting off with some Shaolin monks. Who wants to go first? Is it Razor? Is
I
it
could.
Shad? Or is
I'll
it
ro-
Temp?
I'll Rochambeau you for it, mate.
You can go first if you like.
I don't know. You know what? Yeah, you know what? Fine. I usually don't do these things, these going first things, but for this time, yeah, I think I will. Okay. So the thing about Shaolin monks, I remember the build up to it quite well. Everyone on the MK Online forum or Mortal Kombat. No, yeah, it was Mortal Kombat Online by this point. It wasn't MK5.org anymore, obviously.
Yeah, it stopped being MK5.org when MK6 came out.
Yep. But we had such hype for this game. When I say that, it sounds like I'm building up to disappointment. This is usually the case here, but I'm not here, I promise. But I remember the hype very well because the big promise, right, was this is going to be Mortal Kombat 4, Mortal Kombat 2's story expanded, and it's going to be
Yeah.
you're gonna live through, you're gonna experience the whole thing.
Yeah, we're remaking MK2 and we're sticking to the story, but we're showing all of it, you know?
Yeah, it was going to be amazing. Like these simple little character intros and bios and endings
We
and like
hired
the
a
opening
comic
crawl.
book writer because comic book writers are continuity experts.
You know, in retrospect, it is so hilarious. You know, we had so much expectation because was it really that much to ask for? It's not like MK2 is a huge story. There are just, some beats that happen, and not everyone's a main character. Not everyone has to be a main character. Now, before I continue in that vein, I will say this. My biggest memory, my most fun memory of Shaolin Monks was just exploring it. And I think that today, that is probably Shaolin Monks' greatest legacy to us, like, lore heads out there, at least. Like, it was not just about the fun and like the replayability, of which there's so damned much to that game, but to be able to experience Outworld like that was not, it was like nothing else. Like, we played Mythologies, and that was nice, and it was nice to be places in the MK world that weren't just, single screens from a fighting game. But man, just walking through places like, the pit at the beginning and seeing the Bavushi Academy we did, going through the living forest, seeing all these portals interconnected in the portal areas. They really did justice to each and every stage. And that was the number one reason that I kept coming back, replaying it over and over again, was just the atmosphere. When I think of Outworld, I think of Shaolin Monks' take on Outworld. I don't think it's ever been done justice quite like that ever since. Shaolin Monks was like the last time I really felt like I was in the old school Mortal Kombat world completely. To a certain extent, Armageddon too, but Shaolin Monks just bled that thing you wanted out of Outworld. And the gameplay was amazing. The combo system was so much fun. The toasty, like, combo stuff was fun. Just hit and start, getting points. The boss interactables were fun. The graphics are, of their time. They were blocky even then, but it felt more like a stylistic choice than anything else. Everything about that game was amazing. Except the story. Except the story. When the only person that dies in MK2 is the only bad guy to actually survive,
The only one who doesn't die.
something went kind of wrong there, didn't it? Just a little bit. But we've probably discussed its failings story-wise at length anyway. Like, in other places. I know we have. But it's just really remarkable how dumb Liu Kang and Kung Lao come across. It's so hilarious. Like, just the backpedaling over the plot, like almost like it seems like it was on purpose. Like Shao Kahn screaming, "Your presence here is unwanted and uninvited," when that was the whole prospect behind MK2 is that they they they, they
They were
challenged them
inviting them to a tournament. Yeah.
you were invited. It was wanted.
That's the
Come
only
into our
thing
house.
that you had to get right.
You had one job, man. One job. But all that dumb story stuff aside, like you know what? There's even fun in the stupidity, just how boneheadedly dumb our Shaolin monk heroes are going in. It's a thing to witness, and of course, the classic moment of Baraka impaling a Shaolin monk in the chest and in the head and burning him and flinging his body, and Kung Lao checks to see if he's okay, and Christ. Oh, I'm tearing up just thinking about it. But it was just such a gift that kept on giving, just the atmosphere alone. It was so much fun. It's such a treat to play. Some funny little cameos like Cabal with a goatee pinch for the first and only time. Weirdly enough, fighting Goro, who felt like he had to swing a giant piece of wood at you, or marble.
Yeah. Most of his moves were based around spinning with a pillar in his arms.
It's like, hey, isn't that guy actually supposed to be dead or presumed dead right now? Okay, now here he is. Never mind.
Yeah.
Still lots of fun. Just getting to explore that world, like actually encountering shadow priests and Oni, and feeling like you're in the world of Mortal Kombat. And that Ermac fight in the Wuxi Academy, him showing up like in a substitute area for Shang Tsung's Hall of Champions, kind of. Just this whole big thank you and love letter to the EGM rumor, acknowledging it. It
was a
was
nice
like
touch.
that game gave us so much, and and like the ambient soundtrack that ramped up when you fought enemies, and it was so much fun. And fighting Reptile with his giant snake. Like, I love every single thing about Shaolin monks, except the story, which I appreciate on its own very silly terms.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long after that there was an MKO fight night. Fight nights for any new listeners. In the old days, fight nights on Mortal Kombat Online were where we talked to the developers via like IRC, pretty much. Look, whatever that is up.
Yeah,
Kids.
we got to do Q&As with guys like John Vogel.
Yeah.
And who else was usually in there? I don't know if Ed was often in them, but Vogel was usually in there. I think Baron was in there.
Yeah, I think he was there as well.
I think Ed showed up maybe once for a very brief spell.
Yeah, I
think that
remember
was
that. Yeah.
But yeah, shortly after the game came out, everyone was like, what is going on with this game's story? And I think it was Ed himself who went, just look at it as a what-if scenario.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 different fight nights when Shaolin Monks came out, and the first 2, they insisted that it was meant to be canon, and that the fatalities in the story aren't canon. But the story, like when you get to the boss fight with Shang Tsung, the dialogue Shang and Shao Kahn have literally tells you that they've been manipulating you into killing everybody you've run into so that Shang can steal their souls. So the fatalities have to be canon.
Oh, bless them.
By the
Bless
last
them,
fight night, they finally were like, okay, yes, it's not canon. The game isn't a real remake of MK2. It was just for fun.
I think Vogel's exact words were back when the original Fight Night happened was, watching all the bad guys run away at the end would not have made for a good ending.
Yeah.
That was his excuse.
Oh, bless them, they tried so hard. It's another case of like Mortal Kombat's reputation for gore and death kind of overwhelming story and plot perspectives. That's another conversation.
What you have to take into account is that Shaolin Monks was outsourced. So they didn't have a whole lot of... I don't know if they knew what the story was going to be in the game until the game came out. I think they were caught by surprise as much as we were.
Poor guys. But for that one weakness, everything around it, I can't complain. I still listen to the music on a regular basis. Some really excellent reworkings of some old themes in there. And yeah. One I wouldn't give to be able to play that on like a modern day console.
Yeah.
I have nothing but fond memories about Shaolin monks, alongside a slight bit of confusion. And like one other thing I'm recalling is that there was this whole versus mode that was in the game that wasn't found until way later.
Oh yeah,
Like there were
the
some
way
really
you get
involved
into
secrets.
the way you get into it is so esoteric and complicated that I'm surprised anyone ever discovered it, because you have to like run around the armory stage with an axe and strike the
Yeah.
ground at specific spots on the ground in a specific order. It's
Oh, I remember
so
that. Yeah, it was
complicated.
hard. It was tough. That was like one of the last real huge MK secrets, I think.
It was worth it. Yeah, you got into
Definitely.
like a 10 fight long boss rush mode if you did it right.
That was good stuff.
So,
And there,
Shad, like back in 2000. Oh, what's up?
I was just there are like fight arenas in the boss rush mode that appear nowhere else in the game. They were made just for boss rush mode.
It's the kind of thing that like really wants to make you believe it in them now when they're like, oh, there's still a huge secret in the game that no one has ever found. I want to believe to this day because of stuff like that.
Well, I was gonna say back in 2005. Like, what did you think of the first? It's not even a redesign. It's the first like design, non-palette swap version of Smoke we ever got. Human Smoke, that is. What did you think
Oh,
of
I
it?
was in love with it. Oh, thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah. I mean, I was of course a bit miffed that like Smoke was the only like one of like him and Noob Saibot basically were like the only two people out of that game. Okay, well, and Cabal, I guess, that you had no fighting interaction with whatsoever. You couldn't fight them. But I do appreciate his role as kind of the keeper of the game's secrets, and his visual
The
design
the
was
legend
so good.
remains. There's always been a rumor that it was just unfinished and that there was going to be like one last smoke hint for you to complete that would give you a fight against him, because there's this weird thing in his room of the living forest where there's a tree that can eat enemies, but there's no enemies to feed it. And there's like a spot where a portal to the pit 2 opens when you complete all 5 hints, but there's like more empty space, like it's a very large area and doesn't need to be, so it's like there may have been plans for a 6th hint in a smoke boss fight
Ah,
and they just didn't finish it.
ah, like I can totally believe it. They always run out of time. Even though this is going back to the early days, they never ever have enough time to do everything that they want in a game cycle.
Yeah.
That's a very common game development story. But yeah, Temp, I was totally in love with that design.
I
Completely.
liked it a lot as well. I thought it was good.
I still think it's Smoke's best costume, Human Smoke.
It's up
I
there.
think that's the best look he's ever had, because I'm not a fan of the ones in 9. I would flip, like, he has like a black ninja V with silver trim. I'd flip it to like silver with black trim. That's the
That's
only
the
change
one
I'd
thing
make
that bugged
really.
me. Yeah, I agree completely.
How do you feel about sleeves?
I like Smoke with sleeves.
I mean,
It
I'm
actually,
not.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
works.
if you see my fan art, my Smoke has sleeves. Although I made his pants and shirt baggy because I like the idea of it like billowing in the breeze, like flapping in the wind and stuff. I think that would
I
fit
need
his
both,
like
frankly.
airy smoke guy, you know, like cloudy looking. Like his clothes should be as cloudy as like Deception Smoke's skin is, you know?
Well, I think arguments either direction for MK9 costume. I think the hair is really important. I really feel like Smoke from forever and forward should have long hair. I feel like
Yeah,
it'd be
I
the
mean,
best.
on my version, I added a ponytail sticking out of his ninja cowl so
I'm
that you
Yeah,
completely
still
that
sold
was
see
on
the
it
hair.
too. Long hair all the way.
It had just
'Cause, I
enough
mean,
deception in it too. There was like the deception mask framed there too. That looked good.
yeah, he's got like kind of a ninja crown head protector kind of thing, like Ryu Hayabusa.
It's visually reminiscent of the MK3 Trident in a way. It's actually really subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's me. I have really nothing more to add aside from the fact that I really love that fight. The fight against Inferno Scorpion, where he just won't die and he keeps coming back.
Yeah.
You know, while it has that feeling of Ed just has to get that other moment in for his favorite character. He just has to make him more of a badass.
Scorpion is the longest boss fight in the game. Shao Kahn only has 2 phases, and Scorpion has 3.
You know, that was Ed like, okay, but make him harder. Bring him back. Give him another kick-ass form. I don't know how I feel about Scorpion cursing, because there's a couple of get over here bitches and get the fuck over here if you
Well,
like let him steer you often enough.
the percentage chance that you'd hear the like get over here bitch or get the fuck over here is so rare
It's
that
low.
it counts as like an Easter egg to me.
Pretty
I don't
much.
think it's like in character, but it's like a cutesy little thing because it's like the first time there's ever been swearing in an MK game.
Yeah,
I've never heard it before. I didn't know about that.
it's out there. It's in there. I'm sure you can find.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone's got the audio files ripped. But I just wanted to say that as self-indulgent for Ed as I know that whole 3-stage Scorpion fight is, every bit of it was a lot of fun, and it was the first time you actually get to see Scorpion swinging his spear around and kicking it and doing crazy stuff like that. And it was such a ride. It was worth every single moment, and I had so much fun. And there is not a soul among us who didn't laugh their ass off at the Terminator 2 reference when he sinks into the lava at the end and gives a thumbs up.
Yeah.
So much goodness in that game. That's me. I'm done.
All right. Well, I might as well go next. So the thing about me, and I've probably mentioned this on the show before, it's been 8 years, we've said a lot of things. But I'm not really a fighting game guy. Like I play fighting games because I love the martial arts, but I'm not a competitive person. I don't like playing against other people. I like co-op games and single player games. So in my heart of hearts, like I'm a beat 'em up guy. So Shaolin Monks is on a lot of levels my favorite Mortal Kombat game of all time. Like, and it came out at a time where I happened to be living in an apartment with a roommate, so I had somebody to play it with. They're on couch co-op. Like, I just sank a lot of hours into that game, and it's the most satisfied I've ever been outside of story.
I'm gonna say outside of sex.
I mean, sex is down there, but a good MK story, that's way up there, buddy.
It's competitive, let's put it that way. But yeah, like it just since Deadly Alliance came out and had those alt skins for Shang Tsung and Kano that were remakes of their MK1 outfits. Ever since then, I had been wanting to revisit MK1, 2, and 3 and like visually upgrade the costumes because, you know, when I imagine what they were wearing, I don't really imagine Johnny Cage was wearing brown slippers with no socks at the MK1 tournament. That's fucking ridiculous. There's those outfits are just like what they could do at the time. They're not canon in my head. So to go back there in Shaolin Monks and do what I'd been waiting for to like visually upgrade everything in a way that breaks the canon as little as possible, because 9 would do the same thing but break the canon in a lot of fucking ways. Shaolin Monks mostly looks like I imagine MK1 and 2 are supposed to look. So visually, like, I still think most of the costumes in that game are the best costumes those characters have ever had. So you've got gameplay, you've got aesthetics, all top tier. the only sticking point is the story, and the way they sold it to us, that it's going to be an expanded remake of MK2, and it's going to be the true story finally revealed, and all the details are going to be in there. And it's like, Mortal Kombat 2 is not a complicated narrative. It's a karate tournament, just like the first one. And the central plot of Shaolin Monks is that there is no karate tournament. You're just wandering around Outworld, killing everyone you bump into. How do you get that one detail wrong? How? It's so hilarious to me that they made it like a tagline, like a selling point when they were promoting the thing before it came out. We got a comic book writer to write this game because comic book writers are used to working with continuity, and he'll, do his research and give us, the most detailed true story version. And then, so first of all, about the writer of Shaolin Monks, Jim Kruger, primarily famous for being the writer on Alex Ross's Justice, which is a tribute to the Super Friends cartoon from the 70s. And other than that, Jim Kruger has not had a lot of work in the industry, period. So he's not exactly particularly renowned as a comic book writer. And honestly, when you work on an Alex Ross book, Alex is ghostwriting half of it for you. So I honestly think the only reason Jim got the job is because some of the guys at Midway went to college with Alex Ross, which is why Alex Ross, they were able to get him to paint that cover for MK vs. DC. So some people were friends with Alex, and Alex was like, "Hey, give my buddy a job." That's what I think happened. And Mr. Kruger did not do his research. And I wonder what they even gave him to work with, considering certain requirements like, well, we have to have a Goro fight, even though it's established in MK2 that Goro is currently hiding and pretending to be dead. He's not supposed to appear in any games between 1 and 4. But we gotta have a Goro boss fight. He's Goro. He's famous. It's gotta have every MK1 and 2 character in it. So I don't know. It is what it is. I look back and it's funny now because like I have such a strong memory of them being like reluctant to admit in the Fight Night chats that there was anything wrong, and then we finally got them to say that it's not canon. I had nothing to do with it, but I take it as a personal victory because that's how it makes me feel. But yeah, I mean that's what I remember most about Shaolin Monks. It's my favorite game, except in story, where it's probably like my second least favorite game. So it's a real mixed bag. But yeah, I wish so much that we could get a remaster or re-release of any kind. Because I just like to, be able to play it online with other people and have the co-op experience again.
You could parsec it.
Yeah,
I've done
can
that.
do that. And I'm sure at some point we will.
But yeah, I mean, getting a remaster would be pretty cool. Definitely the demand is there. I mean, it's brought up, I feel like, a lot in the
Oh yeah,
Q&As
it's
that Ed Boon
all
does.
the time. Every single time that people ask Ed questions. And you know that if it were up to him, it would have happened by now. And it's just WB doesn't want to put out anything MK that's not a fighting game.
Got to make that money. Yeah, it's It's the world, unfortunately, that we live in these days.
It's also visuals too. I think WB has a very specific image they want to convey about Mortal Kombat, and that just to the mainstream, Shaolin Monks is not the image they want to convey. I think they're like, no, this is like a fucking PS2 game. This is not the image of Mortal Kombat we want to convey, which is stupid. These are not my thoughts, but that I think is another reason why.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
that's
they even
the thing.
feel
That
that way about
it's been
MKX to an extent. Yeah.
it's been a generation or two too long. It would have to get a remaster now,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of work for a re-release of an old game.
Could you
you
imagine
don't
if
know.
Capcom were like, you know what? None of our titles look really good compared to what we do now. Let's just in the bin. Chuck it all. All the CPS
Yeah, right.
fighting games, all of them. Street Fighter 2, 3.
Like every
Darkstalkers,
couple years, they're
all the
willing to
MVC.
like do another Midway Arcade Treasures or whatever every couple years. Why can't Shaolin Monks just be treated like that?
I think the difference,
Something, you know?
logistically, I think the difference is like pixel art and sprites seem to have like a charm to them that's never ending, whereas PlayStation graphics and PS2 graphics do not age well. Neither do like original Xbox or any of that. I think that's the difference. But I mean, I agree with you in spirit.
I agree that that's a difference aesthetically completely. And I mean, to this day, MK1 through 3 like are still the most visually representative of Mortal Kombat to me.
Sure.
But to WB, the difference between old pixel art or motion captured, such as it is in 1 through 3, and early PS stuff, PS2 stuff, it's academic. It's to them, it's all old. It doesn't exist. Anything that came along prior to them getting the license might as well not exist. I think it's a corporate branding thing, and I'm sick to fucking death of it. WB may have
Yeah.
saved this franchise from bankruptcy, but they've also fucking put a knife in it. You know, I
think
have no
that's-
patience for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll get into that sort of conversation naturally when we talk about MK versus DC into MK9.
Oh,
I mean,
yes,
I think in
completely.
general that you can't really talk about that transition period without addressing that whole thing. So I'm sure we'll give it more in-depth discussion. Razor, if you're done, I'll go. I'll chime in with my thoughts.
Yeah, go
ahead. So for me, Shaolin Monks, like I mean, I agree with you, Razor, in that. I mean, I like fighting games, but it's never been like a huge passion of mine. Like my love of MK is my love of MK. It's not my love of fighting games takes me to Mortal Kombat. It was the other way around. So, like, I really liked the beat 'em up co-op experience. Was a lot of fun. I remember I got it with a friend. I don't know how long after release, but I had a blast playing through it. And I recall we did I think we used like the code or whatever to unlock Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and because we'd much rather play as them at the time than Liu Kang or Kung Lao. And I remember getting to the end, and I think we didn't know about getting like the extra life from like Jax or Kano or whatever it was. I can't remember. You face them in prison.
Yeah, it's Jax helps you fight Kano and you
Right.
beat them, and then it leaves a health
Yeah,
behind
health
for
thing.
the boss fight.
Right, exactly. We didn't know about that, so we just went straight into the boss fight with Sub-Zero and Scorpion. And I feel like they don't have as good of a tool set to face Shao Kahn and Kintaro and stuff as Liu Kang and Kung Lao do. And I remember we were just struggling for the longest time until we finally, researched it a bit and found out, Sub-Zero and Scorpion definitely struggle in that fight comparatively. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. But yeah, that game was just a lot of fun. I love the idea of getting that Mortal Kombat experience, but in a way that's not just a fighting game. I love, I would love like a Mortal Kombat RPG, and eventually what we got with Conquest and stuff like that as well. I guess technically one Conquest came before, but the Armageddon Conquest and whatnot. So I love that explorative feel, and the co-op aspect of it is definitely a lot of fun. So my memories, relating to Shaolin Monks was pretty much just having fun experiencing these characters in this world in a different setting that's not just 1v1 fights. And I definitely agree. It's a shame we haven't gotten anything since, and I hope we do. I mean, even if it's not, it doesn't have to be NRS that has control of that. I mean, they can have another studio. I mean, obviously Rocksteady's been thrown around a lot. That would be cool that they collaborated on something like that. But even if not Rocksteady, I mean, there's so many studios out there that I think could take something like that on. So it's insane to me that we get something like Onslaught, and I'm sure there's a world of difference between, the level of money and time and stuff like that that goes into those types of things. But it's just crazy to me that we'll get something like Onslaught to earn money for WB or whatever, but we can't get Shaolin Monks or a Fire and Ice or any sort of experience like that again for Mortal Kombat. That's just leaving money on the table. As much as I'm sure they rely on MK to bring them a ton of money, I mean, they wouldn't be pushing out a mobile game and movies now, like straight to video movies and so on and so forth, if MK wasn't bringing them money across the table on all these different media platforms. So why not bring in a studio and have NRS kind of weigh in on things, but then the other studio can handle the actual design of it? That's crazy to me. But in regards to thoughts on the game, I mean, I had a lot of fun. I also like the versus mode. That was kind of fun. And yeah, it just...
Yeah, it was unique, the versus mode, because it was
Right.
basically Power Stone
Yeah, I was
instead
about
of
to
like
say.
a proper fighting game.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Power Stone was exactly what I was thinking before you mentioned that. So that's the fun. Yeah, it's fun in its own right. So and I liked having multiple playable characters and stuff. And yeah, really dug the boss fights of the game as well. Those
I
were
always
really cool.
liked in the versus mode. The versus mode was the first time they ever had like intro dialogues.
Right.
So like everybody would have like a couple of quotes that they would cycle through. It was like MK9 where it wasn't like a conversation. It was just like a canned thing they'd say like the funniest thing though is that Sub-Zero only had one, and it was the noise he makes when he does the cold shoulder in the 3D era games
Yeah.
instead of like English. Like he doesn't talk, he goes Onan Kanjiri, and that's all he can say.
God, we need more MK gibberish back in general.
Right?
We need more of that stuff.
Make Raiden babble again.
Yeah. All right, well, Temp, what do you got in terms of Shaolin Monks?
Well, this is probably the toughest game to do a retrospective on for me because it's been so long.
Yeah.
I played the game twice in 2005. I never played the game ever again. And recently I watched the speed run commentated by one of the twins, and it was like I was seeing so much of it for the first time. But I generally remember liking the game quite a bit. I didn't love the game. I liked the game. There's two reasons for that. One, I wasn't really playing a lot of games back then. I was sort of in like a gaming hiatus that really wouldn't end until I think I revisited Final Fantasy 12 in my senior year of college. And then it like actually ended with Resident Evil 4 in like 2009. And that game had already been out for a good while, like 4 years, right? So I kind of like left that hiatus to play Shaolin Monks. And I remember liking playing the game. Like you guys, I was really disappointed in the story. Not the, to most people, probably not the most egregious thing, but I think the thing that really bothered me at the time was when I think they stabbed Jade in the eye.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Liu Kang. Liu Kang just straight up takes Melina's size and impales her crosswise through the head.
And I was like, man,
for literally no reason. It doesn't even serve the plot to...
She was already down.
Yeah.
At that point.
I was thinking like that feels like an overreaction to me.
It is the most gratuitous finisher in the game, and it's being done to someone who's like the one character you fight who's not evil.
Well, that's why it bothered me. It bothered me not just because like it seems like a very clear contradiction in the lore, because this was a little earlier in the game. I didn't realize quite what I was into.
That was one of the first moments.
It's like it's the second level of the game.
That was the moment. I think that was the first that's not how this went kind of deal. I do remember looking at that and going, what? What?
And you guys know I'm a big Jade fan as it is, but what really bothered me is that it was done in a way where it's like the writers didn't know that Katana and Jade were friends. So it's like, I don't know if these people know the story.
Well, no, because the dialogue immediately after that is Katana is like groggy and coming out of mind control that you freed her from, and the first thing she sees is Jade on the ground with sighs sticking out of her head, and she's like, "You killed her. She was my best friend, and you killed her." And Liu Kang's just like, "Sorry, she was attacking us."
Oh, did she say that?
Yeah, and in
She
spite
took
of
that
that,
really well.
in spite of that, Katana still like is making eyes at Liu at the very end of the game in the final cutscene. Like there's romantic music playing and they walk off together.
Well, that is good because it's not as bad as I remember. I remember being like a sort of like an SF5 guile thing, but it sounds like that memory was incomplete. So that's at least that's better. That is a little better, but it's
A
still,
little better, yeah.
yeah.
I'm
Just
wow.
a tad.
I'm sensing a mild theme of like people overreacting to being attacked, like when Liu Kang attacked Raiden in 9, and Raiden was like, "No,
Doesn't Kung
stop
Lao
making me electrocute you."
isn't that one of like the famous kind of funny memes from the game? Is when Kung Lao just gets obliterated and Liu Kang runs up to him and says, "Are you okay?"
No,
or
it's
something like that. I
It was,
can't
it
there's
was,
remember.
it was a
Baraka has
Shaolin
some
monk.
like Baraka like
Oh yeah,
is a kidnapped Shaolin monk and he like stabs him through the head or something, sets him on fire and throws him at you. And Liu
he
runs up to the
bounces.
body and like checks on it, is like, "Are you okay?"
And immediately after this, the guy's soul leaves his body.
Yeah.
Somehow, actually, he made it through all of that, being tossed down the corridor and bouncing over to Kung Lao, and then he died.
That's great.
It's like I never played the game. Like I don't remember any of that. That is so many beers ago, right? And I think like to me, Sean Monks more than anything is a string of random memories. Some of them very good, like all the really hype stuff still sticks out to me, like Kung Lao pulling a rabbit out of his hat and doing a fatality. That's
Yeah.
always a really good memory.
Yeah,
The fatalities
yes,
are pretty
I almost
fun.
forgot
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
They are insane
Oh!
for not bringing that
Just
back.
beats
Oh,
you
it's
to
his
death with a
friendship.
rabbit.
Wait. Oh God, no. Oh no. Stop.
Yeah,
There's
and
two versions of it. One version, he pulls out the rabbit, tosses it to you, you catch it and start petting it like, "Oh, it's a cute bunny." And then it chomps your head off, like bites through your neck and you get decapitated.
The second time they
Python
did the Monty
style.
Python thing.
The
no
second
idea why they
one,
would do that again. Yeah.
the second version, he pulls the rabbit out of the hat and he's holding it by the ears, and then he just starts smacking you with the rabbit, like he's using it like a club.
I'd pay money for that.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Johnny Cage fatality?
I don't.
Where he starts using your nuts like a punching bag and starts doing like the rollover fist thing back and forth.
Yeah, he
back
starts
and forth.
speed bagging your nuts,
Yeah.
and then he like winds up for one final punch, and he hits you in the nuts so hard your legs blow off.
Oh my
Okay.
God. Shaolin Monks had some of the best fatalities in the series.
I was following every word of that sentence. It's like Johnny Cage uses your nuts, and I'm like, what happens after that? Does he beat you to death with your nuts? Like,
Yeah. It's like the
I
rabbit,
mean-
but instead he's just grabbing your bag and beating you with it.
I mean, like, if they were okay selling an AO rated game, I could have totally seen him doing that in this thing, right?
yeah. It's PS2 nuts. It's not even that bad, right?
Hot coffee
But-
nuts.
It's just PS5 nuts would be a different story most likely. But I don't know, man. Like another great moment that always stuck out with me, probably one of the most hype things I've ever seen in Mortal Kombat, was when Shao Kahn threw the hammer and Kung Lao / Liu Kang wraps his body around it and hurls it back at him and breaks the mask. That was so hype. And man, I don't feel like we have any moments like that in the NRS era. I feel like we have no. The only thing that ever kind of made my blood go a little colder was when Noob Saibot said, "We share blood. We are not brothers." I'm like, ooh. But that's pretty much all I can remember.
It's very, very rare we have, these cinematic cutscenes now that they put so much work into animating, and yet, how many times can you think of where you ever saw like a fight happen in a cutscene that made one of the protagonists look cool? Where they did like a really sick move.
I think
The closest I
maybe-
can think of, is there's a moment in 11 where Sector uses his flamethrower,
That's
and
what
if
I
you're
was
playing
thinking.
as Scorpion, because you can choose between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, if you're playing Scorpion, he just sticks his chest out and tanks it because he's Scorpion, and fire doesn't hurt him.
I
But
was
you may
thinking the
not see
Sub-Zero
that though.
one,
That's
but
an
yeah.
optional event.
Yeah, that's optional. If you're playing as Sub-Zero, when Sector uses the flamethrower, Sub-Zero just shoots ice back
they
at
do
him
the
to block
cancel
it.
thing, yeah.
Yeah,
Like the two beams struggle, basically.
The Dragon Ball face-off.
Yeah, yeah.
More or
Basically,
less.
yes.
Well, I will even say that like Sub-Zero fighting, Scorpion fighting the Lin Kuei MK11 with all his teleport shit. That was okay. That was cool, but like it was in the trailer. Like I knew about that going into the game. You don't have that impact like you had at that hammer twirl in Shaolin Monks, right? And
I thought when
unfortunately-
sorry, throw on another thing. It's in the same like moment, but I thought when Scorpion runs at the Cyber Lin Kuei and then teleports behind him was pretty cool too. There's moments, but yeah, I mean, you're,
that's
you're
what I
right.
was
That,
thinking.
I feel like we're missing
bit,
like moments of martial arts choreography influenced stuff, you know?
There is the bit in Aftermath with Shang, Fujin, and Nightwolf versus Geras and the Cyber Ninjas. Like where
There
they
is some
start
cool
reenacting
stuff,
bits
yeah,
from
yeah.
Deception.
or
Oh,
when
yeah.
like Shinnok is not even like trying and he's blocking all of
Damn it,
like,
I was
Johnny
gonna say
Cage's. That's a pretty good one.
I was just about to say that. Like two people, he's fighting two people, just doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah,
He's just
that's pretty
Darth
good.
Vader, Empire Strikes Back in all of the hits, right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's still some gems out there. But
happens.
Yeah, once in a while.
I do like that moment where Shang like kind of bisects a guy by melting him down the center, one of the cyber ninjas.
Yeah,
using
he
his finger,
like
basically.
karate chops and his hand is hot.
Yeah.
I have no memory of that.
It's during
good
before they start doing Deception stuff with Geras. It's that same scene.
Martial arts stuff, man. More actual martial arts, less DBZ. That's what I need.
Wait, deception stuff with Geras?
Yeah, when Shang, Nightwolf, and Fujin all sort of team up on Geras like the Deadly Alliance and Raiden did to Onaga.
Okay, well, Aftermath I watched on YouTube at like 2.0 speed, so all of it's gone, to be honest with you. But that makes sense. Something like that does sound familiar. And Shaolin Monks had a lot of cool moments like that. Then there's stuff like I
Man,
don't
could not
hate,
even
but I don't
watch it
feel like
at
it was
original
done very
speed.
well.
God damn.
Wait, what's up? Oh, the 2.0 speed?
Yeah. That's rough.
I watch almost everything at 2.0 speed. Even things I like, I watch at 2.0 speed.
Okay, so this is
Like-
not an I'm tired of this story thing. This is just like I got no time for
No,
that.
it was absolutely that. But it was also because I
Aw.
watched everything at 2.0 speed. But Aftermath, I just I was out. That was like, okay, let's watch this so I don't have to watch it later. And I mean I was hoping to be impressed, but oh well. But I don't know, just for Shaolin Monks, it's there are things I'm kind of like, if this was done better, this could have been cool. Like when Sub-Zero got his scar from Kung Lao, I'm like, oh, well, I guess that answers the scar question, but it felt kind of out of place.
Yeah,
it felt rushed.
it answers it in the sense of they felt obligated to have an answer, but no one is like, that's the answer.
Yeah, at the time everyone was like, oh, we all just assumed that he got that while escaping from the Lin Kuei clan.
Yeah.
Like,
In fact,
like he dodged a
at this
bus off the
point-
Cyrax or something.
At this point, we know from John Tobias answering questions on Twitter that the intention was, yes, he got it from escaping the Lin Kuei clan. Sector
wow.
probably punched him in the face so hard. Like, nobody wants a stranger to do it in a fight that has no stakes.
So you're telling me that Kano using a cursed Kami Dogu to do it doesn't make any sense either? Wow. The more
Look,
you know.
I'm willing to accept that from the new timeline just because
Oh,
the
man.
new timeline needed a scar on Sub-Zero's face. We had to get there somehow, and they didn't do it in 9, so fuck. Whatever.
It really, it kind of reminds me of that Kids in the Hall sketch where one of the waiters has stubs for hands, and they ask him how he got his stubs. It's like, well, it all happened that day the pasta maker showed up. And it shows this deadly sharp, like multi-bladed pasta maker. He's just making pasta, and it's extremely dangerous device. And then some disgruntled customer comes in and bites his hands off. So that's kind of what the scar feels like to me. And it feels very anticlimactic, both with Kano and with Kung Lao. But I guess Sector couldn't burn a perfect scar in his eye either. That would be kind of hard to explain. I don't know. Like, it's because it has to come from Sector. Right?
The man's knuckles are metal plates. It doesn't need an explanation. Just have him punch him.
I always just figured it was Cyrex's buzzsaw.
Cyrex's buzzsaw would work. I think scraping across his face with a teleport uppercut, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Technically, I'm sure Sector has something sharp he could pop out of his gauntlets that we've not seen him use in his moves list. They're Swiss Army knives. It doesn't matter.
You know what
The point
I
is,
like?
the person who does it needs to be someone who has an emotional fight with Sub-Zero.
I kind of like the idea of him getting it from Cyrax as he's escaping, because then like you can kind of play it up later when Cyrax, goes good or whatever. And then he can kind of look at Sub-Zero's face and always have that regret, kind of reminder of where he was. Yeah, I think it's kind of a cool thing.
I don't have a
Smoke's...
preference which Cyber Ninja does it. It just needs to be during the escape.
it could be Smoke's like trident. It could be shrapnel from one of Sector's missiles. There's any way you can do it. In the context
Hydro.
Of hell yeah. Water cuts, baby.
It's just that putting Cyrax and later in the same sentence has not traditionally worked out. That's the only problem with that.
Why you gotta go there, man?
Because it's funny. It made me laugh.
Maybe he got the scar and the many times that Cyrax has killed himself.
Yeah, he was too close to a detonation. Self-destruct.
Thank you for bringing up that Kids in the Hall skit, Tap. I'd forgotten about that shit.
Dude, it's probably one of my top three.
Good. It's so good.
Probably say my favorite is still the King of Empty Promises, but I really do like that one. Actually, no, I think I like Pasta Maker slightly better. Those are really good. But yeah, I wish I had more to say, but I guess the last thing I'll say is I still, to this day, do not like that reptile costume. I don't like reptile with mummy wraps, and I'm probably never going.
That's dang. That's a hot take.
I think
reptile should have a mask, and the mask should be green.
Yeah, I liked it at the time, but I think it works better for Ermac. So,
for context, we're looking at a time here where Reptile was primarily identifiable by his Deadly Alliance Lizard Man outfit costume, which a lot of people hated straight off the bat. So when Reptile shows up in Shaolin Monks looking like all ninja-like, for the first time, arguably since UMK3, a lot of people were into it. It was a big favorite at the time.
What I appreciate about Shaolin Monk's Reptile is in versus mode, his player 2 palette had, it looked exactly the same. It had scales and everything, but the scales were colored flesh tone.
Yeah.
Which is the only time they've ever really given anything approaching an explanation for the quote-unquote human disguise that he was supposed to be wearing in the original MK1, 2, and 3.
Also worth noting that they saw the reaction to people liking that outfit so much to the extent that when they did Armageddon shortly afterwards, which basically ported every outfit everyone had already had from Deadly Alliance and Deception, they went in and they bothered to give Reptile the Shaolin Monk's outfit.
It's interesting. There were two versions, the big Armageddon wallpaper with everybody standing in a crowd, the famous one. There were two versions of that. There was one that they released that didn't have Motaro yet, and a couple other characters, and then there was a later one where they added Motaro, and some of the costumes are different. In the first version of the wallpaper, it's Deadly Alliance Reptile. In the second version, it's Shaolin Monk's Reptile.
Interesting.
I think it was also MK3 Striker as well in the first one.
Yeah. So, Reptile happened to be one of those characters where they put extra effort in during development to give him an extra costume that, they didn't have to.
Right.
They could have just used the Deadly Alliance assets, and they're like, no, nobody likes Deadly Alliance Reptile. We're going to make a new skin for him.
Right.
What's sad is they knew that before Deadly Alliance even came out. There was a very noisy backlash against Reptile. A lot of it was the tail, of course. I just feel like I could have forgiven everything if he had a mask. Because I think the ninja mask is so vital to the ninja's personality, and
Yeah.
it's such a point of expression that a lot is lost. I'm not going to harp too much on Ermac already having the mummy wraps. Whatever, fine. I'm over it. But I do think it works way better for Ermac, though, because that is his ninja mask. But Reptile, I feel like, needs a beautiful, shiny, green-ass mask, and I'm never going to change my mind on that.
It's interesting because Reptile in specific has to have moves where he uses his mouth. So whether or not you start the game with a mask on him will determine his animations, because he's either going to have to reach up and take off a mask every time he spits acid, or he's not. And if you start the game with him not, because he's wearing a mask that exposes his mouth, like the Shaolin Monk's wraps, then it's too late to go back and add a mask later because it's going to screw up the animations. He's not going to have anything programmed in to reach up and take off a mask. So that when you make the decision of mask or not, unfortunately for the entire game, every skin you're making that decision, it's stuck that way.
I guess MKX was the middle ground on that. Although I'm not in love with the MK mask either, but I don't hate it. But
I think, yeah, the MKX mask is probably the best compromise you're going to find. And I actually, like, of all the masks Reptile has worn, I would say the MKX mask has the most identity that is specific to Reptile.
yeah, I think one reason why the mask is such a pain point for me is because it looks so good on the UMK3 select screen. I'll never forget seeing that for the first time. Just blown away because it's almost like it looks almost emerald. It looks so good to me. But yeah, I think that covers I guess the Kung Lao Baraka shit was hype. Baraka like leaping over the fire was tight. Everything else is gone though. I can't remember anything else about the game. But I remember having a really positive experience at the time.
One thing that's worth mentioning is it has a bomb ass intro. Like that cinematic was super cool the first time they showed it.
Oh yeah, Sonya also looks really good in the game as well. I like what they did with Sonya.
It is also the starting point of them trying to like sell Kung Lao trying to sneak into the MK1 tournament.
Yeah, that was
As
a
a
cool
masked
reveal
guard.
in the intro
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. I like
Yeah,
how
A
they
little
said
while
his
ago,
name.
it bothered me because I've always felt that like Kung Lao shouldn't actually be involved until after after all the Shaolin get massacred by Baraka and the Tarkatans. But it gets kind of cool points.
There's always been like a contingent of there's always been a debate of like Shaolin monks is the point where they introduced a completely different personality to Kung Lao than he'd had in previous games.
Yeah, this
And it's
is
sort of
it,
like
right?
whenever
This is where it
people
started.
complain about the jerk Kung Lao, the jealous second best Kung Lao, who's always like complaining that Liu is the main guy when he wants to be the main guy. That Kung Lao was invented by Shaolin monks, and we've been stuck with it ever since. So it's kind of Shaolin monks' fault, but
It wasn't
I've always been of the opinion. So like the main argument against it is there's people who believe Kung Lao was always intended to be a pacifist. Like the reason he chose not to go to the tournament was that he didn't like to fight and wanted to live a life of peace like a classic traditional monk. And if you actually read the bios and endings in the games, they never said what Kung Lao's motivation is or isn't when he was first introduced in MK2. They didn't say shit about what the White Lotus Society is. Tobias never explained any of what was in his head for where Liu Kang and Kung Lao come from and what the difference between them is. So, you know, if you ask him now on Twitter, he has explained that he intended the White Lotus Society to be some kind of vigilante club that fights injustice in China, and Kung Lao didn't go to the tournament because he thought his work with the White Lotus was more important, that he didn't take the saving the world with martial arts from believing in outworld stuff seriously. He was basically the movie version of Liu Kang.
Right.
But the pacifist stuff, was never his starting motivation. It was supposed to be something he arrives at the end of MK3. It's supposed to be character development, that after he's fought Outworld in MK2 and MK3, he gets to the point where he's like, I don't want to live this life anymore. I want to change. I want to become a pacifist. So he never had an explanation starting out for why didn't you go to the MK1 tournament? Why did you not try to avenge your ancestor? Why'd you let Liu Kang go in your place? So when Shaolin monks went, Kung Lao did want to go, but the Shaolin was only allowed to send one person. They only had a single invitation, so Liu Kang and Kung Lao fought for it in a qualifying match, and Liu won. And Kung Lao's a little salty about that. That made sense to me.
It does
'Cause,
make
like,
sense.
Here's the thing.
It still incorporates a little bit of jerk-ass Kung Lao, which I still don't like.
Yeah, it's about the characterization. That's the part that bugs people. And in my opinion, there was a nice tempering of that in MK9, where Kung Lao was not quite as much a jerk as he is in Shaolin Monks or in 11. In 9 and a lot of the intros in X, the ones that are specific to alive Kung Lao skins, he was much less of an asshole. And if they had writers there now, which they don't, who were capable of subtlety and nuance, you could have a Kung Lao that wouldn't get on our fucking nerves so much and have the Shaolin Monks version of the story, where he's got an actual backstory reason for not being at MK1.
Well, I don't really have a horse in either race. I generally want to go with what's most canon. The reason why I am sympathetic to those who like the pacifist storyline of Kung Lao is because it's much more dramatically interesting when he chooses to fight after the targeted slaughter. That's the reason why I think it works for so many people. Because when a pacifist has to fight, that is just so much more dynamic. That it's like, okay, now it's convenient to fight, right?
I don't know. I just think it's more interesting. Like, it's the same thing, but kind of moving in the other direction. If he starts out as someone who wants to fight, and then learns that he doesn't actually, like, it doesn't feel right, and he'd rather, like, have a life of peace. And then you get an MK4 where he's like, you think he's gonna go after Goro, and when he gets there and slashes him across the chest, he's like, actually, I don't want to fight. I'm a pacifist now. That was a ceremonial thing. And they shake hands.
It's like we've had 16 different chapters of a book out of order and jumbled
Yeah.
wrong. There's a good story in there somewhere about a guy who has principles, who has an agenda, who isn't above shedding blood but learns not to. It's just that we've been presented that story in various ways across various decades, written by various people with various levels of quality, you know? It's so maddening. It's so inconsistent and maddening. Like, this is why I said last time this character is broken.
I just feel like because we didn't have a backstory and everybody assumed a thing that wasn't necessarily correct. The one thing I will tell you definitely is canon in the original MK1 is the Shaolin only could send a single representative. So the idea that Liu Kang had to fight somebody to get that spot is something I have wanted to see. And,
Which is fine.
If you don't do it with Kung Lao, then is it going to be fucking Sing and Sang from Malibu? I'm not interested in that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Give it to me. But no, actually, I also kind of figured that, like, Kung Lao would at least respect the decision. So I don't know. Like, it's cool.
No, I like
the whole NASCAR
the
thing
idea.
is cool, but it also does bother me.
I
It's
like the
interesting.
idea of Kung Lao sneaking along because he's like not convinced that Liu is the guy, and he's like, somebody needs to watch his back because I don't know if he can do the job, because that's where Kung Lao is in his head, still thinking I'm better than him.
If he does it because he thinks if he does it because he wants to look out for his buddy, I'm cool with that. If he does it because I think I'm better than you, look at me, Sifu, I'm the strongest Saiyan. Fuck that.
Well, no, that's the problem. That's the problem with, like, the 9 version, having Raiden walk around knowing the future and be like, Kung Lao, I know it's you, and then Kung Lao is like, well, fine, I'll ditch the disguise and immediately demand to be in the tournament. That was a bad decision. If Kung Lao is going to sneak along disguised as a masked guard, then the way you should use him is only to jump out to protect Liu Kang from assassins outside the bracket, because that is something we should also be seeing at MK1. And they kind of did it in 9 with Kitana, and kind of not. Like, if I were gonna do that, it would be like fucking Reptile and Ermac, the guys who aren't supposed to be in the bracket. You know, Liu Kang should be, meditating between matches, like waiting for his next, round of the tournament, and one of these fucking ninjas jumps him. Surprise! Kung Lao's there to save him. Then it's, like, oh, I'm glad to see you. Don't make him fucking a burden on the viewer, where every time you see Kung Lao, you're like, oh, not this guy again. They write him as such a jerk.
And this is where I'd like
You
to
know?
ask Tobias, because I feel like Kung Lao was supposed to be like charismatically quiet, almost like Clint Eastwood energy,
Well,
right?
yeah, they did say that in interviews back in the 90s, especially with his blue screen actor Anthony Marquez. They always said they wanted that, the man with no name kind of thing, where he doesn't talk much, and he's always just got like, it's the image of the cool guy with the hat tipped low, all stoic and like mysterious. And the
It's
problem
yeah.
with mysteriousness is that it can't last. Like, if you're all a cool picture and there's nothing deeper to you, if you're as shallow as a puddle, that's not gonna go very far.
I
It
think
has
you could
been
do it.
so
Yeah.
long since those days that if they gave us a new storytelling, and that was his intro, and that was the way he acted for the first couple of chapters, it would get beyond coolness points and newness points alone. It would work.
All I'm saying is, you can have the Shell and Monks version if you don't write him so whiny. And like,
That's all I ask.
the one thing that NRS era games storytelling has failed at is making hero characters feel heroic. And likable. And like, you want the moment when Kung Lao shows up should feel like, he's fucking saving somebody, which, to be fair, is how it's done in Shaolin Monks. He only unmasks and reveals himself to save Liu Kang from a soul steal, like Shang was starting to win the fight. Kung Lao kicks him off and then throws the hat at Baraka, because Baraka's about to run in and get involved too.
I'll say that you're right about the mystery, but I don't think that takes you straight to loquacious, though. That's the thing. Like, you can take away the mystery, but still keep him introverted and soft spoken. I think you could have had both there.
The one thing I would like to see from Kung Lao, which kind of fits the Shaolin Monks version a little better than it would like a pacifist version, is that when the driving conflict Liu Kang faces in the original MK2 is he's struggling with whether or not to kill. Like, do I get revenge for the Shaolin who've been slaughtered by the Tarkatans? And, do I give in to the rage that I feel? Or do I stay true to my beliefs in spite of, this horrible thing that has happened? And what I like to imagine is that Kung Lao is the voice, the devil on the shoulder, who's going, why not kill Baraka? Fuck him. He's a monster. There can't possibly be anything wrong with taking that creature out of this world. That can't be a sin, right? Look at him. Kung Lao should
Look
be the
at him.
one saying that, because at the end of the day, Kung Lao is gonna cut Baraka in half. Baraka is fucking sliced down the middle and stapled back together in MK4. We know Kung Lao got him. So Kung Lao is a killer. And Liu Kang, in the end, does hold true to his beliefs and resist that temptation and doesn't kill anybody canonically. But the struggle with his beliefs and making that choice, and some voice, in his ear going, do it, kill him, why not, needs to be there.
I think you can have both, though. I think you could have the silent introvert who wants to cut Baraka in half, right?
I mean, as long as he gets makes it clear to Liu Kang that that's what he wants Liu to do too. Like, why are you holding back? Why are you not avenging our brothers?
So we've talked about Shaolin monks. Now back to Shaolin monks.
It
Is
reads
there
better in
a?
a sense. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I just feel like we've talked like Kung Lao for like 20 minutes. It's got to stop. I'm getting a migraine.
yeah.
I mean,
Do we
yeah,
want to
we
move on
covered it
to
all.
Armageddon now?
Armageddon.
Armageddon.
Yeah.
Armageddon.
Armageddon.
Armageddon. Armageddon.
Well, Shad, you went first. You want to go first again?
Unless anyone else wants to.
I always
Just
go
like my-
first. You can go ahead.
All right. The thing about Armageddon is, it is. I don't think anyone's going to deny it. Up to today, it is such a mixed bag of a game. To describe what a lot of us, myself included, felt going into this, it was, the expectation was trilogy all over again. And that really rang true for me because like trilogy was like the game that I had spent so much time on at home, like probably more than MK4's home ports, certainly more than any version of UMK3 because all the ports were crap and I didn't have a Saturn. Like MK Trilogy at home was my MK3. Sorry. So the prospect of that happening again was like, holy God, yes. And like seeing the wallpaper like change in time and like it really felt like they didn't leave anyone behind, both chameleons were in it, one exclusive to like Wii, but whatever. And freaking they added Meat. They made Meat his own character. I'd like them fucking apples.
Yeah.
This is where we
he rolls his
learned,
head
though.
at you like a bowling ball.
Yeah. This is where we learned, though. This is where we learned that we had inherently inbuilt expectations when it came to a Mortal Kombat game in terms of lore and story and plot. And that was that they'd always be there in a way that always made sense for everyone. In retrospect, it would be a daunting task for any writer of any skill level to find a believable way to mesh, like what was the final roster? 60 characters or something like that?
63.
63. The lot of us were expecting 63 separate characters to each have a valid role in this huge end of the world plot. 63 people. And when it turned out that that wasn't possible, it was so disappointing. We shouldn't have been surprised, but we had these expectations. And John Vogel, bless his soul, went out of the way to try to do bios for these characters because none of the stuff was going to appear in the game. We already know that they were on extremely tight production schedules at that point. Like it was a matter of like Midway trying to keep afloat and keep alive. Like, things were winding down. They were starting to be in a bit of trouble. It wasn't going to happen. Like you weren't going to have reasons for Dairu and Darius and Hotaru to be around. I think that they pretty much figured that we as fans could put those reasons together ourselves. And we were still disappointed when, like, we didn't have that. I was among the disappointed. I was angry, And there was a lot of, like, heat going their way, and they didn't deserve that. So, if I could go back in time as an MK fan and, like, take back anything, it would be some of my rage and entitled bits of posting on MK Online because I felt really betrayed and angry at that time that there wasn't story enough for everyone, and I was not able to see at that point that maybe this bit of story here for Sub-Zero with this Sub-Zero in Conquest mode is all that there is all that they needs, and is all he needs, and I wasn't ready to accept. Oh, everyone just kind of wants some of Blaze's power as a valid plot point for every single character. It felt disappointing. But I am really happy with what John and the writers of that game were able to give us. So if they're listening, thank you for making the extra effort and putting in the extra hours. It's appreciated. MK Armageddon as a whole, in terms of plot and lore and how it fits into stuff, makes a lot more sense because of all the extra work that they did in those bios that they did not even have to do. That said, Armageddon is still such a mixed bag to me. Even the incomplete nature of its story aside, it is a game that I did not spend a lot of time with when it came out because it also taught me a lesson that so much of a character's personality is in their fatalities. Or at least that's how I came to see it. Or them. So, you take this game that has no bios for a good, 80% of the cast. You take away their unique fatalities that give them their signature personalities. And you're left with a game which is already like copy pasting entire movesets and fighting styles, which are named different things, sure, but they're functionally identical. And you have a game that really, really feels like you're playing as maybe the same 12 people over and over again, shuffled around the board. It's a game that lacks personality for a lot of its cast. And you can tell where they put the effort in, because you can see it in some characters like Meat and Reiko, who they bothered to take the time and try to flesh out and make interesting for our sakes, like to make them feel new and fresh to some degree. And I do appreciate that, but I feel like coming out of Armageddon, the thing I can say that's probably the best overall thing about it is Conquest Mode, which I had plenty of fun with. Not quite as much fun as Deceptions, but still a lot of fun. I didn't have much to say about like the new improvements that they made to the fighting game engine, because what was it really but air combos? I mean, Temp will know more about this stuff, and I'm sure he will talk more about this stuff than I can, but Armageddon just kind of felt like more of the same, and maybe it did play a little bit better than the prior two, I remember that, but so much personality was lost. And I didn't care about motor combat the same way I just didn't care about puzzle combat much, or purportedly chess combat. It wasn't what I was there for. I was never there for Mortal Kombat games slapped as a skin onto something pre-existing. That never appealed to me. No, Conquest to me was the absolute best point about that game. I didn't like the creative fatality thing. I just didn't. But another good feature, another really good feature. That game had a pretty damn fun creative fighter mode for its time. I spent a good long while on that, and I remember making my own versions of Tremor and Scarlet, which were designed to not suck. They probably still sucked thinking back on them. My Scarlet was a blonde. Why did I do that? Was it a Gone with the Wind reference? Yes, it was. Okay, moving on.
I mean, I always pictured her as blonde, to be honest with you.
All right, I'm not insane. Cool.
I don't know. I think there actually was some art I saw where well, blonde and red looks good anyway. It's the Carmen Sandiego thing, so
Maybe.
unless Carmen
Hey.
Sandiego's not blonde, I can't remember.
Carmen Sandiego is a brunette.
Yeah.
Okay, then I made that up.
All right. Okay, well, I'm at least glad to know that someone else thought that the concept of Scarlet, as it existed at that point, might be blonde. So I'm not the only one. That's nice to hear. No, Armageddon was this really strange, kind of disappointing game. But as much cool about it as wasn't cool about it. Some good things to look back on and think about, like, some cool sound effects and some cool songs in there. I like the soundtrack, the new stuff that it gives us. I thought Taven and Dagon were pretty cool. I liked having a concrete like origin and like purpose behind the Black Dragon. Everyone loved the moment where we got to see Rain's asshole personality shine through for the first time. That was when Rain really began. He was a joke up until that game. That game made Rain a viable prospect. Also made Shinnok a little bit better too, but Shinnok was never truly fleshed out until X. That's a universally held opinion. Wasn't crazy about Blaze. Liked the concept. The execution was, like I've said recently, I never cared for Fat Blaze. He's he's a fatter, hairier Astaroth.
Well,
on
I
Friday.
disagree.
No, no fat Blaze. No fat
He
Blaze.
is he does look like Astaroth. Why does he have that mask?
I just any other head, man. Any other head. I actually, honestly, unironically prefer Mortal Kombat 2 palette swapped halfway Liu Kang on fire than I do Fat Blaze. I can't stand it. I can't stand the way he flails his huge fat arms around with stalks for fingers and toes.
He
It's
rolls at
ridiculous.
you
Yeah, he has Melina's role. He just
Why? Why does he?
because he's
too
huge. And it's
big.
hilarious.
It's
Because
terrible. It's
But-
bad.
let's say their character design at this point was rough. I feel
Ugh,
like
it was really rough.
I kind of like the whole fat man in little coat thing they got going. I dig it.
I'm probably rambling at this point, but just that Armageddon was a game I really, really, really wanted to love top to bottom, and it gave us a couple of really cool things, like I've mentioned, and it was nice for like those extra battles to put Johnny Cage in kind of this mentor role and have him actually experience some character growth. That set a new marker for my respecting Johnny Cage. But it was so flat in other areas. It's cool to see Sector do some stuff in story mode. That was nice.
yeah.
And then there's the endings, the arcade endings. Anyone who's listened to this podcast or listened to me and Razor knows about those endings. Oh man. The whole game just kind of, as much as it was fun and it tried to be fun in certain places, there was also this kind of sense of we don't really care much, or we can't afford to care much for the personalities that these characters are normally associated with, and all the endings were just tossed off. Most of the endings were just tossed off badly, and it just felt like this game was designed to murder most of the cast, not bother with the investment that we as fans had put into them to a certain degree, not to be insulting or anything, but it was missing so much. There was something wrong, you know? Something was off. I wanted to love Armageddon, but never quite could. I look back on it now a bit more fondly than I did at the time, but it's still a far, far, far cry from the game that I wish it was. Next.
Well, we've done an entire episode of the Patron Cast that revolves around my feelings on Armageddon's story and basically my feeling that just because you say it's the end of the world doesn't mean it has to be. Like, you can have the good guys win and prevent it at the end. And there could have been sequels. There was no need to reboot. That's completely engineered after the fact. So my starting feelings on Armageddon is that, looking back, with the limitations that we now know they had, none of us realized at the time how serious Midway was financially, like how their situation, like how close they were to going bankrupt. None of us really imagined that things would get so bad that the company would genuinely close down and get bought by someone else. Looking back now and knowing what they had to work with, I kind of like Armageddon. I've always kind of liked the story of Taven, Dagon, and Blaze, Argus and Delia. I think it can be difficult, and they face the same problem in Deception of focusing the story on a singular main character when you traditionally have an ensemble cast, and sort of neglecting avenues to tell stories with the other 25 or however many people just to give one person the spotlight. And in Armageddon's case, you're neglecting 62 people just to give one the spotlight. But I still think that within the limitations of Taven as the main character and seeing everything from his perspective, they still managed to show us, stuff that was going on with Sonya and Sector and Sub-Zero, Noob Saibot and Smoke. There's little hints of things that you can read into of like what happened to Lee May at the end of Deception. How did that whole thing where she was turning into like a mind-controlled Onaga loyalist, how did that shake out? Well, it seems like maybe she did betray the good guys and then got sent to hell, and maybe now she's trying to redeem herself because she's going after Shinnok. I don't know. Uh, hey, there's Shiva and Motaro and Kintaro, and they're in the Nether Realm. So I guess Kintaro died in a previous game, and it's like,
Yeah, there's like bits and snatches for a lot of
yeah,
people everywhere that you want to latch onto to form a complete picture that isn't quite there.
there's enough tidbits for a creative person who enjoys headcanon and fan fiction to fill in the blanks, which is kind of how the old arcade games were written. Like we got used to being spoiled with complete stories in Deadly Alliance and Deception. And to go back to
Complete
the
stories, man, we had it good.
yeah, right? Remember when multiple arcade endings came true in a game?
Those were the days.
Yeah, Armageddon, like in some respects, it's not, you know, pleasant that we're back to bullshit arcade endings that are completely non sequiturs and don't matter to anything. And we're back to having to piece together the story from a single line of text here and a single bit of dialogue there. But on a certain level, I am nostalgic for some of that. I do enjoy having an active role in figuring out what the plot is supposed to fucking be to a game.
It hit different though. Like you knew that in prior games, it was
Yeah.
like, okay, section A from character ending B is canon,
Well,
section B is not, and whatnot and whatnot. But with Armageddon, it was like, this is mostly completely entirely bullshit, isn't it?
what
Yeah.
hits different about it to me is the knowledge that even if you figure it out, it doesn't matter anyway. Like the nihilism of knowing that they're going to throw it all away in the next game. But I prefer to live in the world where I, write fanfic that takes place after Armageddon. Everybody didn't die. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Did you
And
expect
then
it to continue afterwards? Question.
I I didn't I did not know what to expect. I think on some level I expected a remake of MK1, 2, and 3, especially after Versus DC Universe went back to a version of that status quo in its own story. Um, and also like after Shaolin Monks and the place that society was at the time was just a lot of things were making remakes.
I
That was
I
kind of
remember I remember kind of expecting a really low key roster of survivors. I was expecting MK8 to be this
I know
soft reboot kind of thing.
a lot of people took that one thing Ed said once about how he'd like to make a game of all new characters where the only returning is are Scorpion and Sub-Zero. And I never believed for a second that that would ever happen because it's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. First of all, it's not going to sell. Nobody wants it. You can't. We already saw what happened to Street Fighter 3.
That is literally exactly what Street Fighter 3 was.
Yeah, yeah. We know for a fact that as a business decision that doesn't work. Uh so I never expected that would actually be what they did. Um I expected something similar to what 9 was. I just expected it to not outright be about fucking time travel and changing the story on purpose. That caught me by surprise. Um but no, I would have much preferred if they just made Mortal Kombat 8, just continue. I don't believe in reboots, really.
A
I
reboot
like
didn't seem feasible to me. Like Armageddon really felt like it was a game that was engineered to just cut the wheat from the chaff. Like they were just tired of all these constant character requests for joke characters from MK4. Sorry about the meat love. People like Jarek that no one ever liked in the first place, and now we expect him there because it's a huge game. It felt like Armageddon was designed to get rid of an entire generation of crap.
Yeah, but when you think about it, it's even more efficient a way of getting rid of crap if you just start the universe over and never introduce it.
Sure, that works too.
That's what they did. But
I mean,
yeah,
they kind of wanted to do both things, you know, like that was the issue with the 9. Like it wanted to both cut away all that crap and start the universe over, but remind us
yes.
that the crap was still intact. And
Yeah, because we're still getting games where intros reference that Jarek exists.
we're gonna
They'll
have to
never-
have that conversation with like when we get to 9. That's a whole other thing.
They'll never be playable, but they keep teasing that he's around. They haven't actually deleted anybody. I mean, they've deleted like 75% of Su Hao, but Su Hao is still a character that exists in the universe. So what's the point?
I think it's just to throw a bone. It's like pay an homage and Easter egg to those that were actually fans during that time. That the few people that do like those characters, and I'm
Yeah,
not
but
crapping on
they
the
do it
character.
in
I'm
a
just saying
way
like
that doesn't
popularity
feel
wise.
like they do it in a way that doesn't feel like they're giving you something you want. They do it in a way that it's like we killed Su Hao and here's his head. Isn't that funny?
Sure. I mean, to their sense of humor, I think they do find that funny. Like I don't think they, from their perspective, they don't have as much loving nostalgia feelings for some of those characters as like the fans do. So I think to them it's like here's a wink and a nod to people that have been around for that long, but I don't think they see it from our perspective of, hey, why do you keep waving these things in front of us that we actually kind of do want to see brought back and, you know, given a proper, you know, another shot, so on and so forth. I don't know. I don't think of it as like, I think it's just a disconnect. I think it's a disconnect
I
from
understand.
them and the fan base. The fan base actually wants to see these characters done in a way that makes them not just the butt end of the joke and brings them back in a way that shows them more respect and probably a better showing than they got originally, like a Su Hao, you know.
Yeah,
But I don't
I
think they see it that
understand.
way.
I understand why they do it. I just think that like if you see Su Hao that way as just a joke, why didn't you see Stryker that way? Why did he get the remake?
I think they
Why
did.
is he like a slim, sexy looking John Cena man now?
I think they did see Stryker that way until. Well, hold on. I think they did see Stryker as a joke for a long time, hence his
Yeah.
absence for so long up until Armageddon. Even Armageddon, he was kind of silly, but like,
Yeah.
I think
But
in
that's my point.
MK9 was like them bringing him back because they kind of had to, because they were retelling that story. If they would go back through the actual Deadly Alliance and Deception stories and give these characters, I mean, that's kind of my biggest, like, why I've been championing and why most of us have been championing, but me specifically, like, my mentality on this is like a lot of these characters aren't as beloved as, you know, the trilogy era characters, only because they didn't get the greatest showing when they were around. If they would bring back an Ashra or, you know, XYZ, even a Su Hao or whatever, like, there's no reason why they couldn't be as popular as a lot of the trilogy era characters, like a Sindel or whatever, if they just gave them, you know, a modern design, like, you know, a Kotal Khan or a Devora, etc. Like, I mean, they show a lot more, I feel like, love and attention and just better concepting with these characters than they did with the 3D era ones in terms of just like fully fleshing them out design wise and not. I feel like the 3D era they were kind of running out of ideas and they kind of.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
it's in places like there are some things like I'd say like looking at Deadly Alliance or Deception Kenshi, and that's the guy that looks completely fleshed out to me. You know?
Oh yeah, no, that's not.
Like,
Yeah, it would.
I feel like it's mainly a matter of like those characters debuting from a time where the engine was janky and the
Sure.
graphics had that chunky quality.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
that, like, you know, sure, there's also there's maybe moveset problems, like maybe this is why Drawman feels like a clunky design because, you know, he doesn't have that much to work with. But
Right.
I just feel like you could copy paste Drummond from Deadly Alliance as is in a new game, flesh out his moveset a little bit,
Oh,
not
for sure.
change very much in the way of design, and he'd be good.
Oh, absolutely. That's just kind of my point is like they didn't get a fair shake. They were introduced in, like you said, janky games where the 3D gameplay was not, I mean, nobody looked the best in the 3D gameplay. Like, I mean, yeah, there were some exceptions and there were some, ones that managed to escape it unscathed. But like, if you took a lot of the characters that were introduced in Trilogy and introduced them in the 3D era setting, I feel like they would struggle just as much. And that's kind of my point is like, if you give these characters a modern rebranding and just kind of give them a fresh coat of paint, so to speak, and then some gameplay love and give them all the attention that characters get these days in a 2D setting, there is no reason why half of them at the very least couldn't, knock it out of the park and really gain a solid foundation of a fan base. And that, in my opinion, like you would think logistically, that would make all the sense in the world to do. Like, why not? Why not take a character like a Su Hao that they look at as a joke, but then bring him back and take a character that they think is one of their worst characters and then knock him up to maybe like a B tier character? Why not do that? Why not take your F tiers, your D tiers, and then try and bring them to C or B or A tier? Why keep introducing new characters? They can't possibly think these characters are unsalvageable. That's the thing that has always been strange to me is like the whole mentality of like competitive gameplay is to take the characters that are low tier and then give them buffs so that way they make it in a higher tier. So do the same thing with your characters that you look at as being low in popularity or less than. So yeah, I mean, I think we're all on the same page in that regard. That
Yeah,
it's just
yeah. I
kind
mean,
of
Completely.
that's my point. Like the 3D, the gameplay in the 3D era, it's not just the new characters. Like the 3D era, gameplay wise, absolutely fucking ruined Johnny Cage, Sonya Jackson, Raiden. Like they were nothing like how they should be, moves wise. And yet nobody, says fuck that, leave them out of the next game.
right.
You know. And, Stryker, the point I was making is that for like 15 years, from the moment he was created until MK9, Stryker was a joke. Everybody hated him. And
Right.
yet, they proved that it doesn't take much to rehabilitate a character and take someone who's like the maximum amount of uncool and bring them up to the same level as everybody else.
I think you could say a similar thing with Bo Raicho. I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
Bo Raicho
You
had
can
his
like they
haters, and I think a lot of those probably got kind of their mind changed a bit. Maybe not so much on like the puking and the farting, but in terms of like his design and his gameplay, I think a lot of people changed their minds.
yeah he's more grounded. Like he looks even more the part of like the kung fu master than he ever did, but he's still got some of like the stuff that he brought in from the 3D era, and with some extra stuff to boot, like some excellent gameplay design mechanics, the power ups with the fire breath and whatnot. They it's like once a game they roll the dice, and they just select one person, one potential representative that they like, that they know that people like. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they only ever do it one character at a time. In 9, they fixed Stryker. In X, they fixed Bo Raicho. And in 11, they fixed Fujin. And then they
Yeah.
don't try with anybody else.
Well, in 9 they also gave Kenshi another shot.
Yeah, but Kenshi was already good.
It was already good, and they knew people liked him, so they felt that it was a
They
worthwhile
really
investment.
they didn't give anything new to Kenshi except for the overhead drop, which made him one of the most broken characters in the game.
I love MK9 Kenshi.
I feel like his and Bo's like presence does say that they're willing to take the chance, that they don't look at the entire 3D era like a lot of us think they do, as this kind of cursed wasteland.
I'm just saying.
I think that they pick their battles with them a little bit too carefully.
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
all.
instead of doing only one character to rehabilitate at a time, they
should
could
do, like,
like
5.
5 or 6. Yeah,
Yeah.
it can't possibly be that much effort
I mean, not
compared
that we're
to
getting
making
to
anybody else.
Yeah, not that we're getting into like MK12, but I based on his comment about they plan to fix that perception of them hating the 3D era, like in my opinion, they got to do at least 5. I mean, that yeah, but I mean we could go down that road, but yeah, and if he's going to actually live up to that statement, they got to at least they got to do the Bo Raicho, treatment with 5 other characters that we have yet to receive.
I'll
I'll
be
believe it
happy
when
if
I
they
see it.
I'll be happy
Yeah.
if they roll the dice on 3 characters, you know? A step up here and there from what we're used to seeing. Not just Frost, not just Bo, not just Kenshi or Striker. 3 characters, and while I'll wish for more, I'll be happy with at least 3. Kira, Cobra, Drummond, whatever. Just give them a shot. That's all I ask.
I think
It would,
Havoc,
know,
it would be
Reiko, and
nice
Serena
if
probably.
just to prove a point, they picked the really low tier, like
Yeah, I think you got to
Darius
at
and
least do one of
Dairu,
them.
Cobra and Kira. Somebody people are actually not asking for back, and they made them cool.
Yeah, if it was up to me, I mean, you do at least one of them per game to, like I was mentioning before, to raise them up in the tier. Like if you are only as strong as your weakest link, raise all like rising tides, raise all ships, whatever the hell that statement is. It's like, why not bring up the bottom of the barrel as they see it, or even as fan popularity wise, bring it up so that way across the board, the entire Mortal Kombat roster history looks stronger because of it. But anyways,
Yeah.
Armageddon.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, when I look back and I think of Armageddon, I don't think of a bad game. I think of the things that I really loved and bring forward to me as positive memories about Armageddon are, first of all, the conquest mode. I loved the beat 'em up mechanics. I loved wandering around as Taven and actually being able to like do combos to mooks and stuff. Like I think that is the better of the 2 conquest modes between it and Deception, because like I said in our last episode, when we were, reminiscing about DA and Deception, I was like, look, the idea of the open world running around as Shujinko was very creative and interesting, but the execution was so empty for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
the outworld map doesn't have enough, landmarks and famous places. You can't really interact much with anyone. Like you can swing a punch and either knock a person out or they'll block it and throw a punch back at you. And it's like, why is this old grandma a better martial artist than Shujinko?
The world of Mortal Kombat is a wide and mysterious place. You shouldn't be surprised.
He, he has learned every single move that Bo Raicho, Sub-Zero, etc. know,
There's
and
always someone better. This is
he's still getting punked
Outworld.
out.
This is Outworld. You don't fuck with strangers in Outworld. You only caught Blanche by surprise that one time. She's gangsta.
All right, it's just I like having a proper, like Deception Conquest is very similar to the 11 Crypt. You're just running around and opening chests, and you can talk to some people.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the whole mode. Armageddon Conquest is an actual video game.
Yeah, it's more like Shaolin Monks. I'm sure they
Yes,
shared some
it's
of
a
the
game you
stuff.
can play. You can fight opponents.
It felt a little bit primitive, but yeah,
Yeah,
it was
no,
more,
it was obvious.
it was definitely more fluid than Deceptions was.
It's
Absolutely.
obvious that because Shaolin Monks had come out and been so successful, they wanted to try to squeeze a version of Shaolin Monks into a mainline MK.
Right.
And they had, there's only so much of it you can do. And even so, I'll still take it because I had fun. It was enjoyable to me, and I enjoyed getting little bits and pieces of story here, going in there, going to like the Lin Kuei Temple,
Yeah.
and seeing Sub-Zero fight Noob Saibot for the first time in any Mortal Kombat game, with the context of him knowing that he's his brother. Like, that has never been seen before until Armageddon.
I was so
and
happy
all
with
that
that
stuff.
moment,
Like,
and I was like, Smoke's gonna get that too, right? Instead of talking to his buddy. No, he
You know what? You know what?
didn't.
After Taven beat up Smoke, Smoke teleported away, and the next time we see Smoke, he's on the
He's
good
with the
guy's
good
side
guys.
in the
He's
opening
with the good.
cutscene. So clearly, Taven punched the programming out of him, and he finally has his free will back.
This
No,
is
I agree.
this is
That was my
real. This is
interpretation.
real lore. Thank you, Taven. You deserve another shot too.
That's
Like, I'm
yeah,
not
that's-
joking. That's the conclusion I came to as well. I was like, whatever happened after that, ultimately Smoke made some switch in between that teleport and the pyramid. That was always the conclusion I came to.
yeah.
You know
Off
what?
screen, he got his free will back.
You know what? They hit him so hard in MK3 that he shut down, and he languished in Khan's dungeons for how many years? Then Noob finds him, reboots him, rewires him, makes him loyal. Then someone hits him again and knocks his programming back into place. He's a broken toaster oven. Trust him.
And you know what? Also,
He's the Millennium Falcon. You hit it to turn it on and off.
Yeah. When the machine doesn't work, smack it.
and we also that it also follows that at some point off screen, Natara was like, you know what? Fuck Smoke.
Uh,
No. I remember like that's the only time you see him in the Armageddon intro. Like, he's fighting Natara for some
Yeah.
reason.
For some reason, yeah. I don't even know why Natara's on the bad guy side. She's not a villain.
I know why she's there. It's because they
Well, yeah.
needed someone else on the bad guy side. That's the only
Right. She looks like a monster, so let's put her on the monster side. Ooh, vampires are automatically evil. They drink blood. Fuck you.
Evolver is a mask and he's a very scary man. He's evil.
It's the same logic that they cast the bad guy side in the 2021 movie with. Pick all the ones who look like monsters. It's so stupid. But Armageddon.
Armageddon.
I appreciate I can never express in words how much I appreciate John Vogel after the game is already out. You know, he's probably not even getting paid to write those
Right.
bios for the website. He's doing it in his own time. And he squeezed out, I don't know, like 12 of them, but each one sort of covers multiple characters. Like, Shang Tsung's bio tells you why Raiden is dark.
God, it really is like they wanted to add so much more for a story mode or something, and they just couldn't do it.
I appreciate knowing, hey, you thought Ashra was a good guy, but actually her sword is evil and brainwashing her. I like knowing that now. I like knowing what Serena's been up to since Mythologies, because they won't fucking tell us. Finally, Serena gets a bio in something. So yeah, when I remember Armageddon, those are the things I remember. I remember the good things. I do not have, there are people who are like, if I was going back to the old timeline, I'd make MK1 through Deception, and I'd stop there and make a new game. Armageddon wouldn't happen. And I'm like, you can't not have Dagon. If you don't have Dagon, then the Red Dragon Gang doesn't have a backstory.
fuck the Red Dragon.
Well,
Got
I
enough.
like Dagon. I like his stupid fucking. He looks like Lex Luthor wearing Sephiroth's costume. I like Dagon. I don't know why. I couldn't explain it to anyone. It's
It reminds me of Tom Waits for some reason. I don't know why. It's the jaw. I think it's the jaw.
yeah, I guess I could see that. Taven looks like Ben Affleck.
Yeah, Taven looks like Ben Affleck. Dagon kind of gives me the vibes of, isn't there like a big old evil looking like mayor or governor somewhere, like highly involved in politics, that has like a goatee and he's bald and he's very intimidating. I cannot remember this guy's name. Somebody somewhere will remember what the hell I'm talking about. Anyways, he looks like a villain. But
Yeah. Oh, he is one, so it
yeah.
fits.
I'll jump in then and give my thoughts on Armageddon. So one, badass intro. That's like when I think of Armageddon, I immediately think of that. I loved that intro cinematic, and I mean, all the 3D era had great intro cinematics. I love those.
Oh my god, man! The moment where like they're zooming across to like this empty wasteland, and
Yeah,
Kentaro, out of all people, is the first thing you see. That was a treat for me. That was a
yeah,
huge treat.
It's always neat
yeah.
when they remember Kentaro exists, right?
Right. And I mean, like, I appreciated that they'd put these intros out like, I don't know, weeks before the game came out or like a month before the game came out. So I just remember watching that one over and over, like I did with the Deception and the Deadly Alliance and all that. I love that kind of stuff. So that's one thing that I look back on very fondly. I appreciated the creative character. I did not appreciate the creative fatality. Granted, I mean, how are you going to supply fatalities for 63 characters on a roster, let alone like two of them? But yeah, the creative fatality was pretty meh. When you're like having to put in combos to tear out a brain, then you're tearing off an arm, and then you're tearing off a leg, and then you could fuck it up so then they just fall over. I don't know. Like, that was so lackluster. I'm glad that was a one and done type of experience, and they never, ever, ever tried to do something like that again. Like, if you're gonna do a creative fatality thing, it needs to be like a creative
Yeah.
character where, or like the WWE games, like you go in and create it into like a creator itself, and then you can go and use it with that character when it comes time. Like
Yeah,
you put together the animation yourself, basically.
like I think it was actually a matter of space concerns or
Sure.
something because
Yeah, it's just if
like
63 characters, even if you take out like the concern of like what are we going to do for created characters, you have 63 people, two fatalities per person means you have to design 126 finishing moves. That's
Granted, they
not
could
going
have
to happen.
reused. I mean, they could have reused for all the characters that were in Deadly
Yeah,
Alliance
yeah,
and
they could
Deception,
have.
but I mean,
I think that
yeah,
that was something that I feel like they maybe tried to and went like, look at how much memory this is taking.
yeah,
And they did just this. They sat down, they calculated. It's like, no, this is not actually possible. So creative fatality was probably like a quick, dirty solution that worked for everyone.
right.
It was literally the best they could do, and it's unfortunate.
It is
As
when I remember like what is the thing I like the least about Armageddon? What is the lowest point of that game? I think of creative fatality.
yeah, it was not fun. Like after you've tried it once or twice, you start to understand how it works, and you're like, oh, this this is something that sounded cool, but it is not cool. But yeah, like Shad mentioned, there's some good sound, like there's some good stage tracks on there. I think Meteor Storm, was that what it's called? Meteor
Yeah,
Storm.
Meteor
yeah.
Storm, the
That
Hell
one
track
sticks.
is
Yeah, that Meteor Storm
the
sticks out to me as like my favorite on there. I love that track.
the Hell track, that version of Hell, like it's actually my favorite, probably NetherRealm theme of most of the games. Where it's just sick riffs all the way through. It sounds like something off a Dio album. I don't know. It's great, and
Right,
I love the Lumber Mill. The Lumber Mill is fantastic.
right. And then, just, I mean, this is a small appreciation, but this is something I've noticed is just kind of the way my mind works is I loved how they organized the select screen by like themes. Like they put all the ninjas at the top, then they did like
Yeah,
the female characters in their own group, the bosses in their own group, like stuff like that. I find interesting. Like that kind of sticks out to me as a roster type of guy. And then obviously, I love the aspect of having everyone is here. I mean, that is really cool. I mean, if there's any reason to play Armageddon, it's for that reason alone, is just to be able to go back and know I can choose any of these 63 characters. And it may not be the most like fun, competitive, or ideal MK experience because, like most of us, I would have to imagine, if not all, prefer the 2D style of gameplay. But like in terms of just being able to select that many characters was super awesome. And like things like motor combat, I did not like just because to me, it's not that I don't like the concept of it. I love Mario Kart, but it was just so half-assed. I mean, and I don't
it's
mean
like
that insultingly. It was
no,
just,
like
you can tell it was very rushed and very like a super add-on to the game that like I would love something like that if it was actually fully fleshed out and played as well as Mario Kart. But when the things like when all the concepts are just like the wish.com version of Mario Kart, like then it's just like it was not fun. Like to me, like it's one of those things you try once just to check it out when you're bullshitting with friends. You maybe try it once or twice, and then after 20 minutes of it, you're like, okay, let's actually just go play the rest of the game instead. And I wouldn't say the same about Puzzle Combat or like Chess Combat. I think those were done much better, especially Puzzle Combat. I was a big fan of that, but yeah, Motor Combat to me felt the most. I think it's because it was the most ambitious in terms of like size and scale of everything, especially what they're trying to like, model after Mario Kart, but yeah, it just it did not. I didn't care for that at all. Conquest was awesome. Like Razor mentioned, it was a much more enhanced version of the Deception one in terms of just like actually letting you go and do a beat 'em up, side mission, like side like story of the game. And I would imagine if we were to get another Conquest, that's what it's got to be. It's got to be like a Shaolin Monks experience in the game itself. You can't. Nobody wants. It's kind of like the crypt in MK11. Nobody wants to just run around and punch something or break things and open chests. Like that's just a nice, fun way. As cool as the aesthetics in the crypt were, it was just this fancy dressing for what was ultimately not like a very fun gameplay experience. So yeah, I did appreciate that they actually tried to make the conquest mode in Armageddon what it was, so that was cool. Not getting character endings was pretty sour. And man, I used to be like such a like somebody that was always wanting the FMV movie endings from like MK4 and Gold back, and we never got them. It was always the comic style endings in the 3D era, and what we got now. Granted, they can tell more story with it, and it's obviously way less ambitious of a project when you're not having to do full-on cinematics for it. And we get story mode and everything else these days, so more than makes up for it. But yeah, man, to get, what do they call them, katas? Is that what they're called? Katas?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, like that was pretty disappointing on top of like the no bios and stuff. So that was pretty meh. And yeah, I'm trying to think out anything else that sticks out to me on Armageddon. I like the air combat I wasn't into. I really, like I mentioned, getting all the characters back was cool. Like getting Sector for the first time since MK Gold. I mean, obviously he was in like tournament edition on the handheld, but who gives a fuck about that? So yeah, getting Sector back was pretty awesome after sitting out several games.
In terms of like roster, like having Reiko and Sector back, and them giving both Chameleons another shot, them giving Jarek another shot, and having Fujin back, and making him meet his own character even. There was a lot to actually like there. I remember spending a lot of time with those guys in particular, and Shinnok too, and to some degree Two-Legged Mataro for all I could stomach him. and Serena. But
yeah, I mean, so all of my fond memories are pretty much those kind of things, like just having all the characters and just the scale of everything was pretty cool, and getting stages and all that fun stuff back. I mean, there's something to be said about the all-in gimmick like Trilogy was. It has its own little special fun factor to it. It doesn't have to be the most fun game or well-balanced game or anything, but when just all those options are there, it's something special. So it may not be the ideal game in the 3D era. I think most of us hold Deception as the highest, like most highly regarded, but in terms of like Armageddon, is its own little special nostalgia factor. So that's kind of what I think of Armageddon. That's kind of where I like to leave it. Anything beyond that, though, yeah, I can't think of anything else really to say about Armageddon specifically.
You know what though? You mentioned balance, and if I'm not mistaken, I might be off base here. Again, Temp could probably correct me. I think that out of the 3D era games, if I'm not mistaken, Armageddon is the one that has the most balance, or is the most competitively viable in that kind of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 way where like maybe 6 people are useful. Temp, any truth to that?
I would say it's the most competitive. I don't know if I would say it's the most balanced, but the most balanced game is debatably Deadly Alliance just because neutral is so strong. So no matter how good your tools are, they're useless if you can't walk up to the person and punch them, right? So you could make a case Deadly Alliance is the most balanced, but in terms of like tournament competition, I would give it to Armageddon. So I'd say you are correct, yes.
Okay. Because I remember there being something of a scene for it in those rudimentary early days when people played each other online on PS2, like Brave Souls.
Deadly Alliance also has the virtual fighter problem, where because 5 people play it, they can say whatever they want and no one can disagree with them. And I say virtual fighter not because there's a ton of virtual fighter players. Don't get me wrong, but the problem is like they're all like old men who like pay child support. So like people will say, "Oh, virtual fighter is the hardest fighting game," or they're like, "Oh man, virtual fighter takes 3 months to learn one character." So they'll say things that have hints of truth in them, and almost no one can prove them wrong because we're all fucking 09ers who got good at games in Street Fighter 4, right? So yeah, like Virtual Fighter probably is very difficult. Don't get me wrong, but Deadly Alliance has a similar phenomenon where people could make grandiose claims and ignore nuance. Like, yes, Virtual Fighter does take 3 months to learn a character if you learn them on like a Korean tournament level. But that's true of everything. That's true of like MK Deception Smoke. Like, that's true of all things. Like, guitar is the hardest thing on earth if you have to be as good as Steve Vai, right? So it's just that's how I feel about Deadly Alliance. No one really knows for sure. With Deadly Alliance, it is the most balanced fighting game if you're taking Rio's word for it. But the fact is, Rio is the only person on Earth who has delved that far. When we have 2 people on Earth who have delved that far, then we can actually have a conversation. But right now, I would say it is Armageddon.
It doesn't
Well, it's
matter
not
if
that, like-
something's balanced if it sucks.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Armageddon has options in a way that Deadly Alliance never will.
I almost thought that Virtua Fighter had like 6 or 7 different Pai Mei type figures sprinkled across Korea, like Japan, and like parts of East Asia, each of whom have spent like lifetimes mastering a single character. That's not been led to believe that the journey as a Virtua Fighter fan is pick a character and then you stick with it for life. There's no going back.
That's what the Virtual Fighter cats don't think about, is that the best gameplay in the world still has to deal with exploits. In Marvel 3, no one thought anything about Rocket Raccoon, and then someone from Japan came over to the States and fucked up everyone with log assist, all right? And then he said, "I'm retiring," and he never played the game ever again, and the entire US scene was salty as fuck. Does that mean Rocket Raccoon is like this top tier character? No, it just means that you can't know everything, right? And that quality gameplay does not mean that you can't get very far by understanding the game and using exploitive techniques, right? And just honestly, it doesn't matter how good you are at a fighting game. If your opponent knows what you're going to do, you're usually dead. So that's what I would say to the Virtual Fighter crowd. I don't mean to downplay them or say their game isn't actually super fucking hard. I'm just saying for a long time, they've been able to say whatever they want, and no one's been able to prove them wrong because no one knows anything about Virtual Fighter. I guess is it my turn? I don't know if we're.
I think it is your turn.
Yeah,
Nick.
I want to say one last thing, and
Sure,
and this is just more of like an overall sentiment, is I hope we don't see Creative Fighter ever again. And it's not, like I said, I liked it in Armageddon, but here's my problem with it is, as somebody that's played like, I don't know, a lot of like the WWE games online and stuff, when you introduce a Creative Fighter, you're never going to see, well, not never, but you're going to constantly see the most horrid creations ever of just the most obnoxious shit. And you're going to be fighting Homer Simpson online. You will lose you will look, I once got screwed out of a match when Homer Simpson refereed one of my matches. And okay, this is bad memories. But the point is that I'm getting at is when you open up Pandora's box to players, it's going to be rare that you actually see the characters that you're playing Mortal Kombat to see. You think guest characters are bad? It's going to be worse when you're fighting, think like Soul Calibur, right? Where people
I
are
saw what
Tekken or
happened
whatever.
last time, man. I'm afraid. I'm afraid, impressed, and a little bit inspired, if I'm being honest.
I agree completely, but for opposite reasons, sort of. Like, here's the thing, as someone who also plays the WWE games, is the WWE games have the most robust character creation options in all of gaming, and I
Right.
am constantly aggravated when I play like an MMO or a Skyrim, any game where the whole premise is you get to create your character,
Right.
and then it's like you can choose from one of 3 goatees.
Sure.
What the fuck is the point? Like, why even have if you're gonna have a game that has a character creator mode and your whole game isn't based around the customization options, then why did you have a character creator mode?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like,
half-assed.
when I play the WWE games, I'm playing them to make entire rosters of OC donut steals. I don't give a fuck about playing as like Roman Reigns. I'm not gonna
Sure.
use him. I'm gonna make everybody from ECW. I'm gonna
Oh,
play
yeah.
Sandman versus Tommy Dreamer. That's what I do.
Oh, I do that too, and I usually me and my friends will make ourselves basically, and then we'll make all characters from the past. I guess my
Yeah.
main point is like for a Mortal Kombat game,
Yeah,
like
the
if I
thing
go
is, like,
online or whatever, I don't want to see some Joe Blow's horrid
you
creation
don't want to
to ruin my
see
life.
the
Basically,
Soul Calibur. I made a giant banana with a penis.
yeah, I don't want to see that. I just want to be Sub-Zero fighting Scorpion or what. Like I want to see the characters that I'm here for as much as possible. And I feel like you really run the risk of ruining that if you build in a character creator. So that's the only reason I personally would not
I'm just
like
saying,
to see
my
it
point is,
return.
like, if you're gonna have a character creator, have that be the main point of the game, and that can never be the main point of a Mortal Kombat game. The main point of a Mortal Kombat game has to be Mortal Kombat and the Mortal Kombat characters and their story, and they're never going to have the resources to devote to making a game entirely about making your own characters and then fighting
Sure.
them in the Mortal Kombat engine. Like, they have to devote too much to the actual roster. So it's always going to be a half-ass character creator, so just don't have one at all.
Do you have any idea whatsoever just how many ninjas made entirely out of cocks you're arguing against? The possibilities, Jerry.
Gold, Jerry. It's
Cover
gold.
6, someone just made a cube. Like you load up the match and you were just fighting a cube.
Imagine, is the hitbox a cube? I bet it's not.
No one knows. No one has any clue. Not even the cube knows.
Has anyone beaten the cube?
That's actively cheating.
I think the cube is banned now. I think they redid customs so you couldn't have dicks or cubes.
Basically, if you put in character creator, you're gonna be playing Cards Against Humanity online. It's gonna be the eagle in a box, that type of thing.
It took 2 years, but you can finally turn that off. Now, whenever I play Soul Calibur, I can't see any of my opponent's customs.
First they came for our dicks, then they came for our cubes. I said nothing.
Because I was not a cube.
But
So,
yeah, that's
yeah.
just my little. I just wanted to weigh in on that because usually that's not a topic that comes up very often.
Yeah,
Anyways, Temp, go
I think
ahead.
we're done with creative characters. I love the idea of them one day maybe getting right a create a costume mode for the existing characters. But the times we live in now with the microtransaction options and the mobile game currencies and the randomness to keep you logging in every day, let's throw that idea out too until the gaming industry is mature enough to pull it off without exploiting people.
I agree. Sorry, Temp just put the cube in the chat. So now I'm just seeing that cube. That is not what I was expecting.
It's not just a cube; it's a rainbow-colored cube.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not at all what I was
It might
expecting.
be a mod or a hack, but it's real.
I was thinking like a gooey cube or like an ice cube. I was not expecting just very angled.
It's 6 sides. It's just a block.
Yeah, that's like a PS2 cube in.
Yeah, that is the cube. You have encountered the cube.
I'm reading it. I'm reading about it right now. There's an actual character model in there, but like the cube graphics, each side of it obscures everything the guy's doing.
You can't see the human body that's going to attack you, so it's fucking cheating.
This picture is so like accurate because Keelik is doing the absolute right thing right now. That is exactly what
just
she's doing
blocking
against the cube. Yeah,
There's no defense against the cube.
This is
But
what
you're
Stanley
definitely
Kubrick
right.
sees when he dozes off.
I think a custom, like a character customization and all that type of stuff is absolutely, like, I think back to like Tekken, being able to like switch up their, I think it was like Tekken 6, I want to say, or 4 maybe, back when it was like Raven and stuff, and you could put on like the Raiden hat on him and stuff, and like I was like, oh, that was so badass that they did something like that.
That
But
never
then
went away. They still have customs to this day, even in 7.
right. And that kind of customs is great. That's the kind of customs we all want to see. We don't want to see it like just absolutely used as an excuse to keep you playing and grinding, like Razor was alluding to. So I agree with you. I think for now the most safest and respecting our time, I think, is just to let's not handle that until they're ready to handle that in a more kind way, and instead let's just go back to alternate attires. But anyway,
And Tekken and Soul
Armageddon.
Calibur always had like thirst options for their customs anyway. Like it's just you could put someone in like a Santa outfit for no reason. Everyone could be a schoolgirl. So yeah.
Sure.
But Armageddon, really I was very excited for Armageddon. Not as excited as Deception, because Deception was just so many characters were coming back and having unique designs for the first time. So nothing will ever match that in the history of Mortal Kombat. But the reason I was so excited for Armageddon was because Smoke was finally going to be his own character. And that was such a big deal to me, right? So yeah, I got the game. Johnny Cage and Goro were on the steel case. I went home and I played as Smoke. Probably put like 20 hours at least into that character like the first month. I enjoyed every moment of it. I enjoyed the custom combos. Although to really say if I like that or not, I would need to watch the ketchup and mustard stuff and see what they were doing and just kind of see where the ceiling is on how viable that stuff was. And on paper, I would prefer the stance transitions from Deception Deadly Alliance if there was some sort of like execution barrier, but there wasn't. It was just a memorization game. You memorize the inputs, you cue the inputs, and you do a 3-stance combo, and that just got so boring. So the fact that I could do something creative was a lot more fun to me. But on paper, if there was like a 2-frame link between stance changes, I would have preferred that, right? But yeah, so I really enjoyed the game. It's kind of the first game where I really thought, like, they probably could do something cool with Chameleon with a C if they wanted to. And I was happy to have him there. I don't like meat. I'll never like meat, whatever. I thought the story mode was okay.
Fuck you.
Sorry,
Sorry, go on.
Okay, so if meat was MK4 meat, I'd be fine with it. But MK Armageddon meat was just way too moist, so I can't do that, right?
The moisture is half the point.
If he gives you a hug, you have to take
I'm
your
a
shirt.
shed.
No, I can't. Smoke Man feels the same way. Smoke Man loves moist meat.
Here's the thing: is I agree that MK4 was better in the sense that he was more bony, but the fact that he's constantly like drippings with goo is part of the appeal to me as well.
It's just way too Clive Barker for me. I can't do it, man. So
You'd
yeah,
hate,
that wasn't
you would hate my optimized meat. You would hate it.
probably. Yeah, no, I
I can't remember who said it, but somebody said if Pinhead makes it into MK12 as a guest character, there's a good chance Meat should be like some sort of like he escaped hell, like one of the, like Frank in the original one. Like I think that's a good opportunity. Working Meat.
I would
It is,
eat that
it is.
bullet in order to get some form of meat playable in a game. I'd do it.
Yeah, I'll take a guest character if we also get meat. Yeah.
That's a good trade-off.
That's a fucking conversation for the day. Who would I actually fucking accept as a guest if the trade-off was I'd get someone else I really loved in exchange? Oh man.
That's a good idea.
man.
That's a good idea for a topic we should do sometime. Yes. Anyways, Temp, you were going.
I enjoyed Armageddon quite a bit. I liked the conquest mode. I don't think there's anything more I really need to say on that. I liked Fat Blaze just because I thought it was a lot of fun. I kind of treat him the same way I treat the whole game. I just kind of look for the good and enjoy it for what it is. Because I wanted like a Deception level storytelling, and once I realized we weren't getting that, things like Fat Blaze don't seem like such a big deal anymore. So I just kind of had fun with it. And on top of that too, the fighting game, any fighting game, not just Mortal Kombat, any fighting game is only as good as this roster, right? So to have that many options was a really big deal. I'm okay with Striker. I'm okay with that redesign. I thought that I still prefer the classic Striker, but I think he looks okay. I like the blue and the black and how it kind of works together.
I would much prefer classic Stryker over Bryan Singer's X-Men Stryker.
The time, man.
like, I
People
think
were
his-
all about that
his-
striker.
His
But,
old
like-
costume would be ideal if he wasn't wearing a balaclava and I could see his fucking face.
Well, that was kind of weird. The alt costume felt kind of out of nowhere. Really, what they should have done is made the alt costume his classic, and I don't know why they didn't do that.
Well, the old costume at least actually looks like a cop in SWAT gear.
He's
The
wearing his.
primary is explicitly a fantasy outfit. I'm not joking when I compare it to Bryan Singer's X-Men. That's exactly what it is.
He's wearing his
It has
MK3 outfit in one of the
nothing to do-
wallpapers. What happened? I wonder.
There was a wallpaper there, and there's concept art in the crypt that shows that they designed that there was a point where he was going to have the classic MK3 outfit. But we got the X-Men instead. What does that have to do with being a cop?
You could rationalize if you tried hard enough, but I just think I like that he looks older. I kind of like the sort of like the firing range glasses. I think that looks good. Like I said, I think the blue and the black looks nice. So I like that they mixed it up. I think one of the real disappointing things about Street Fighter 6 is that some characters they didn't even try to redesign, like Jury. Jury literally looks like they copy and pasted her into the current engine from Street Fighter 4. So that's the kind of stuff I don't like, but I do agree it should have been an alt costume. That's really where I think they messed up. But that's fine though. As far as the whole game goes, you have so many options, and that's really what fighting games are about to me. That's why the roster is so important. You boot up the game, you choose your character, then you choose how you want to play that character, and then you choose your opponents. You can fight strangers, but you don't have to. I was just playing Guilty Gear today. I'm thinking this is awesome. It's so crazy that we have good netcode in Guilty Gear Xrd now, right? So, yeah, not a whole lot to say. I think the last thing I'll mention is the bosses. The fact that you can play Goro or Kentaro is really nice. And if you want to play those characters this day, that's really your only option is Armageddon. So historically, I'm glad we have something like that. Because you're not going to play Onaga ever again, probably, unless you put up Armageddon. That's just the way it is. So, actually, even worse, Moloch for sure, you're never going to play again. Onaga, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I think they'll do Onaga. Onaga's as a boss character in a series that has so few bosses feels inevitable. But
And
yeah,
he
I
was
don't know if we'll ever
received-
see Moloch again.
He was received relatively well too. People remember Onaga pretty fondly. I think it's a matter of time.
He's a boss character done well. His size, I think, really does him a lot of favors.
Yeah,
too.
I've never heard anyone actively say they don't like Onaga, you know?
Blaze is another story. Blaze is weird.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
Blaze is in the pile of rock lava guys that they just kept doing for a while. And him and Dark Khan and Corrupted Shinnok, and people are just tired of it.
He's actually got a reason to be on fire, though. It's in the namesake, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna
that
give
doesn't-
Blaze
that doesn't
this.
make
He's got...
the design more
No, it doesn't.
less generic.
Remember, I'm the first guy that said he hated Fat Blaze. It's about how you do it.
See, that's the
But
thing.
I do want to give Blaze this. I did like his input into the storyline and that giant role that they gave him. It was another instance of them elevating this rumored or mysterious background character in MK and putting them front and center stage, and I always loved that. I didn't care as much for the execution, but he's got these good moments towards the end of the Conquest mode where he comes out and he's like, listen, you two, you fucked up. This is the way it's gonna be. I'm putting you back on the path. Now you fight me in Mortal Kombat. And it was one of those last times where I kind of felt hearing the phrase "fight me in Mortal Kombat" was a thing that sent shivers up my spine, you know? It was a good moment.
I like him. It's because he's not evil. He's just a guy doing his job.
Yeah, he's acting according to his programming. He's interesting. I like him. I would give him another shot.
Yeah, bring him. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say he's a priority for me, but yeah, I'd love to see him back. Fat and all, bring him on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wasn't a big fan of Fat Onaga. Conceptually, I like Onaga. Design wise, he's a little bulky. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Like
I've-
I'm just saying, like if they brought him back, I'm sure he would be badass and awesome. But like as is, when he's like walking out in Deception, and when you fight him, like the I don't know. I just want a little. I just want a little
like
more. I guess.
it's tough to tell. Like I'm looking at the Armageddon wallpaper with the entire roster on it right now, and he looks to be about similar in build to like Kintaro and Goro. So, big, but not like bulky and massive. He's another acid casualty of like the blocky models of the 3D era.
In my
I think he'd come
opinion-
along a little bit more streamlined if they reintroduced him.
Right.
So, in my opinion, the whole appeal of Onaga is traceable back to the Deception opening and the way he tanks the Dragon Ball Z blasts.
Right.
So, I think Onaga should always be visually presented the same way that Dragon Ball presents Broly.
Yeah, that would. I mean, I'll take either. Honestly, I would love to see Onaga again in general, but the reason why
Onaga should be treated like the strongest and the biggest, the big green Broly.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not like a pure hatred or anything. Like I see a lot of potential in Onaga, and I would love to have him back just because. I mean, we've had every other boss back. Bring Onaga back, give him the Shinnok treatment, give him, the modern treatment of like a nice fresh redesign, so on and so forth. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just like, I don't know. Like he's big. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I don't know. I don't know, man.
Well, I'll wrap up then. Really, the big thing about Armageddon is that it has a very bad reputation. A lot of people just say that game is trash, and they kind of leave it at that. I think we need to get past that, because if you look at the package and all the options and all the cool stuff you can do and all the characters you can explore and all the competitive strategies, even if there is like a narrow, like competitive number of characters you can use,
Right.
there is a lot there, right? I exclude create a character from that just because I don't think any of the create a character options look good in the PS2 era. They're barely passable in Soul Calibur 3, but in Armageddon, no, nothing looks good to me. So I'll take that out of there. But yeah, just I mean, and even as a fan, just be able to play as Smoke solo was such a big deal to me back then.
Oh yeah, it was. It felt huge, but they still didn't give him a fucking weapon where everyone on the cast, or most people, had one, and it irked me.
Everybody
good
had
thing,
one
because he would've gotten a
style and
fucking
one
hammer.
weapon style, and he had two martial arts instead. Yeah,
I'm perfectly fine with that because I saw what happened to Noob, but I'm like, we dodged a
yeah.
I
You don't.
suppose.
I'd rather have fucking what were his two styles? It was like
He had Mitsu, and I think he had Judo.
Mitsu and Judo instead of Mitsu and a troll hammer.
He stole judo from Kenshiro.
Ah.
But you know what though?
I mean, they could have. I mean, Cyrax and Sector were both using lightsabers and of sorts, and he was still technically a cyber ninja thing too. Could have had some sort of smoke blade. I'm sorry, I'm reaching here.
Yeah,
Smoke
yeah, you
blade.
are.
Okay, I mean, well, a nano sword could work. I'm not against that idea. I think that could have been all right.
Yeah, here we go. It's some shit like the
I-
dark saber or whatever the fuck.
I will say that
I'm fine
yeah.
with what we got.
Well, Cyrex's like lightsaber seemed so shitty after Sector was shown to be a dual wielder. I'm like, that is so much cooler.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of Sector overcompensating fits so much.
Well, I
so,
mean,
yeah.
if the pattern were to follow, where Cyrax was introduced first as lightsaber guy, and then Sector comes in dual wielding, the next step is Smoke would have the Darth Maul one.
Yes.
Or he just has like a
Also, no, I
handful
have
of
to
them.
think about that. I don't know if I like that or not. That I'll
Like,
meditate on that.
I kind of like it. I'm kind of erect right now. I'm enjoying this. Let me.
I'd
I
say
don't know
you-
if they
you
had.
should
I don't
double
know if
them
they
each
had
time.
the. I don't know if they had the mocap data for that, because the way Raiden handles his quarterstaff, if Smoke had those animations, he'd be putting his hand on the lightsaber blade all the time.
Oh God.
Smoke should have just wielded like a cigar,
Womp womp.
just like
Damn.
just like put it out on people and shit.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Cyrax the first lightsaber wielder in gold?
Yes. What did Sector have? I know
I
he
think they
has a
gave him a
fucking
gun.
gun.
What?
Well, I can't remember because the
That's
weapons
no
would be
way.
different depending on the
No way.
skin, and I know one of Sector's skins had the gun. I don't know if it was his primary or not.
There's no way he had a gun. Come on now.
Oh, he absolutely had a gun. Johnny Cage also had the gun if you were playing his tuxedo skin.
Wow.
It functioned just like Fujin's crossbow, where it could like shoot diagonal, bouncing off the ground and shit. Yes. Okay, I'm looking it up. Sector's primary weapon was a laser gun.
All right, okay, it's decided. We need a new round of Photoshop's Sector with a gun.
What the
Oh,
hell
yes.
is-
I want to add one more thing before I close out. The tower / evil monastery in Armageddon is my favorite Mortal Kombat stage of all time. It is my favorite stage fatality of all time. It's got the most killer instinct stage fatality I've ever seen in Mortal Kombat. I really, really like how they handled that stage. I love the fighting on the stairs. It looks so good. That
Oh, is that the one where like you can just keep on knocking them down this endless flight of stairs constantly?
that's the Shinnok stage, I think. That's
No,
with
that's
stairwell?
there is a stage that's an endless staircase that's supposed to be inside Shao Kahn's fortress. The one he's talking about is the MK2 Evil Monastery.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
I still call it the towers. I like that name better.
Yeah, it's
The Evil
tower.
Monastery. I don't think anyone would call
But
themselves the Evil Monastery.
The tower had like if you spun the camera 180, you were facing like a blown out wall, and you could knock them down a staircase to a second
right.
platform, and then that second platform was bordering an open portal, and you could knock them into the portal where they'd be crushed
Yeah,
because
I
it was
remember
more
that.
like a black hole gravitational thing. But that reminds me, like one of my pet peeves about Armageddon was there a couple of stages you unlock as you're playing the game, and those stages, including the MK2 tower, will not normally show up in arcade mode at all. You can only play there if you select them manually during versus mode.
Oh my god, it's the fucking ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 arcade problem all over again.
Yeah.
Ugh.
All right. I'll take that few seconds of silence and disgust and disappointment as we're
That'll be the note we end on.
yes.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we were we were talking before we actually got started recording this of like whether or not we were going to cover MK versus DC in addition to these games. But I think it is best and more appropriate that we cover that along with MK9 next time. Because those two eras for me really kind of tie into each other as this whole separate end of one era, beginning of another type of deal. It was a transitory period.
The Warner Brothers infiltration begins.
Yeah.
So yeah, look forward to that as our next whatever we're calling these, the anniversary things. And then as far as this episode goes, thanks everybody for tuning in. And
hang on. Sorry. I got one more thing. Because we're all coming into this talking about Armageddon the way we have been over the last hour. You know, accepted faults aside, look at how we're talking about it. It's all we're actually really positively looking back on this game that has been like we've just said, poorly received and has this bad reputation for many years now. But I've always looked at it as having these interesting shiny bright points in a sea of muck, and I find a lot of the time when things like that happen, be it like a later period album from your favorite band or a movie you kind of enjoyed, no one else did, and then you kind of shelve it for years. Sometimes things like that have a way of getting critically reevaluated, the sentences, with the passage of time.
time heals all wounds.
It does. And I think we're at an era now where hopefully people can or are giving Armageddon a second glance and finding more things to enjoy about it, all flaws intact.
There is something I want to say in Armageddon's favor. in terms of the like, if I could go back and do MK over, I would stop at Deception and make a different sequel. It without Armageddon, fan favorite character Rain has no backstory.
Mm.
There is no Rain without Argus and Delia. Or at least just Argus.
Well, there was, but he was a general.
Nah, it was.
Trilogy. All right, I think we're actually done now, are we?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that covers it.
Sorry to interrupt you, BC.
No, you're fine. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And if you haven't already, come and join our Discord. It's always in our description. Go check that out because we have a great community. And shout outs to Rain Reptile for organizing community events. So if you've been digging like the roster stuff we've been doing, like the prediction game, or when we did our ideal rosters for MK12, he's been organizing with other people in Discord basically to do it like as a community thing, and then they have fun getting together and talk certain nights about that kind of stuff and go through together and like present much like we did on our episodes. So definitely go join the Discord for that kind of stuff, and we have a great community on there talking about all things Mortal Kombat, and then we're all on there as well, so you can come interact with us. And yeah, just thanks everybody for tuning in.
I want to throw in one more thing to advertise before we end the episode. If anybody out there was wondering if we were serious about actually keeping up with the patron cast and whether or not you should put your money down, I want to say that within the next week or two we will be recording another episode of the patron cast. Merc is almost done with our artwork for the next character redesign from the 3D era, so that'll be soon, and you'll get to see it a week early if you're a patron on the Patreon. So join the Patreon.
Give Razor your money.
Give me your money, yes.
But seriously, thanks everybody for
smash that like button.
Yes.
And,
so I mean,
you know
what?
Give us money.
Speaking of that, I mean, we've had an influx. I mean, I've been doing a lot of videos, and our podcast episodes have been getting a lot of views lately. So obviously there's some hunger for Mortal Kombat talk, be it Mortal Kombat 12 or just whatever. So yes, absolutely. I mean, if you haven't subscribed to us yet, I mean, we've gone up a few hundred in just the last 28 days, according to our metrics on YouTube. So I'm making it a goal to get us to at least 10,000 by MK12. That's a personal goal. We are currently at 5,400 something.
Well, I think you can pat yourself on the back for that, because nothing says interest like a good dynamic host who's passionate, who creates content on the regular.
Yeah.
Sit there bitching about the present versus the past. Like,
well, here's the thing. Like, I have always said about us is like, because not everybody wants to listen to a podcast. I get that. Not everybody goes to YouTube for like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour show. And there's been people that have complained about that. But then there's also people that stay for that. So my thought process was always been like, come for like, if I can get you in the door with a 6-minute, 8-minute video of me just trying to passionately talk about Mortal Kombat, if I can get you in the door, I think you're going to stay for all the other content we do. Like, this is where like the real meat and potatoes are. So the thing is, we do everything. So
I mean, I could never be, on face cam, and I'm certainly way too long-winded to make an under 10-minute video, but I appreciate that there is someone on this channel capable of feeding the algorithm.
Yeah, the YouTube algorithm is a beast. I've been trying to learn more about that. But anyways, belating the point, or whatever the hell whatever that word is, it's getting late. I can't think anymore. But regardless, definitely subscribe, but join the Discord. We have a great community of very awesome MK fans, and we're always talking about all aspects of past and future MK, across the board gameplay and lore and all that good stuff. So I can't stress that enough, So thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
See you later, nerds.
Fare thee well until next time.
Take care, everybody.